today. So this dialogue has been organized by SDPI under the auspice of its Green CPEC alliance that was established between SDPI, Pakistan China Institute, and Dr. Christoph Nadopilbank from. He's currently the director of Griffith Asia Institute. He's with us online as well. But I believe in the overall program that we'll be showing you a bit shortly around the grid modernization and how it sort of aims to develop some of the priority solution. We'll come to that, and we'll also let you know who are the partners that will be involved for the 1 year program that will happen. But I believe before going to any of the technical discussions, let me set some of the housekeeping rules. So just to mention, the session is currently being held in a hybrid manner. We definitely have most of the speakers and people joining us in person, but we also have people joining us online. And the session is also being live streamed into SDPI's social media channels, including Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. And we invite audience from the questions from the audience, both who have joined us in person as well as online. For the online participants, you can always use the Q&A and chat box to put down any comments that you actually have. But anyhow, for the in-person, once the panel discussion start, we do have a dedicated 20-minute slot for the bilateral discussions and Q&A session as well. So with this, let's sort of move towards the topic at hand. I believe as for the program, I'll go into it a bit shortly, but for the official opening, let me invite Mr. Engineer Ahad Nazim. Ahad Saab is currently working as Associate Research Fellow, and he heads the Center for Private Sector Engagement at SDPI. Ahad Saab, with this, over to you. Ahad Saab has been engaged in the overall renewable energy sector for, I believe, 12 years now. So, but yeah, I believe, so again, a very right person for the job. So yeah, over to you, Ahad Saab.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. It is always a pleasure to meet with the intelligentsia of the sector. I'll just briefly give you a sort of an agenda setting so that the discussion coming forward after this can appropriately be sort of focused into investment opportunities that can be sort of gathered from CPEC too, and additionally from other Chinese and non-Chinese investors. If we just briefly touch base on what are the issues at the moment, I think the grid faces two major outcomes that needs to be corrected. One is, of course, in the terms of losses and theft, and the other one, of course, is and grid failures as well. While the other one is basically in terms of the availability aspect, which comes as a consequence of maintenance. So if we divide our grids whole operations into a sort of a life cycle where of course one part is installing new equipment, and then it's the operations and maintenance, and then replacing the older parts. I think this will be very appropriately this can be very appropriately done by including investments as well. So just to give you some examples, I think it's about time that we totally shift from the AIS based systems to GIS. I think this will not only reduce the incidences of losses, but also I think will make more reliability and availability going forward. Similarly, SCADA control to be included in all the aspects. And I think the maintenance part we can really learn from China. In addition, not only to the installation part, but also to how they are predicting the maintenance part, plus also how they are practically handling it. So they are using drone technology for handling the grid issues. Similarly, they're using AI for predictive maintenance. So these are some of the things that I wanted to bring in front of the forum so that we can sort of discuss the solution oriented and be part of the solution rather than the problem. So with this, I'll hand over to Ubaid, and also be contributing again. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sab. So, yes, I believe the problem very rightly identified. If I can just request the MIS team to sort of display a couple of slides that sort of explain what our initiative is and how do we sort of are planning with some of our very close partners, including Renewables First, Lums Energy Institute, and uh, Policy Research Institute for Equitable Development, right? In a journey that will certainly be sort of starting, and definitely some of the very important stakeholders sitting over here, planning to take everyone on board as we sort of venture into this journey as well. But so I believe we are sort of SDPI in collaboration with some of its partners is initiating a program which would be called the Grid Modernization to support variable renewable energy uptake in Pakistan. So I believe Ahad Saab has very rightly highlighted some of the challenges that we currently do have at the hand when we especially talk about the integration of variable which, renewable energy sources, which could be solar, wind, and how, I mean, what exactly are some of the challenges that we are facing, difficulties in sort of integrating within the national grid systems as well. So just among all the challenges that are mentioned over here, let us very quickly go through them. One thing that we really all understand is that whenever we talk about energy transition, whenever we talk about transitioning towards a low carbon technology, energy transition has a cost that is very much subjective to what interventions are further coming in. So, I mean, definitely new capital is required, new technological investments are required. We have been seeing some of the very initiatives that involves the repurposing of some of the old inefficient thermal plants in Pakistan as well. Again, once again, that too has a cost. If we talk about any early retirement of fossil fuels, especially through one of the, such as one of the Asian Development Bank led energy transition mechanism, it eventually everything has, when we talk about this energy transition, it has a cost. Now this challenge again couples with one of the, I mean, economic situation of Pakistan. We all fully understand that we're already in one of the we have been going through this economic crisis, especially when we talk about how energy sector has contributed to that, driven by inflation. We have a lot of agreements that are dollar indexed. We have constantly increasing secular debt. We had the capacity payment issues. We have, I mean, what it is all leading us to is a constant increase in energy prices of Pakistan. Similarly, again, it's not so, I mean, definitely it should not have been, but our long-term power purchase agreements have now somewhat become a challenge that needs to be addressed. At the same time, when we talk about the repurposing or early retirement, definitely at the short term, it won't make a very good economic case. We have a very young fleet. We have of fossil fuels, which we cannot sort of very quickly get away from. Definitely, whenever the investment figure would sort of come in, then we'll definitely be talking about some of the structured financing instruments that can actually be used to address these issues. But the two challenges that we'll talk about particularly today is how this overall VRE transition or renewable energy transition is being sort of challenged by two challenges. One is the transmission constraints, where we'll be talking about the potential modernization approaches required, how grid constraints, what are, how these high losses are sort of contributing to it as well. And second problem would be again the investment challenges that currently exist. I mean, we haven't actually, as of the moment, we haven't. We need to provide a much more better investment landscape to some of the most of the investors in Pakistan. But nonetheless, one thing, once again, just like we sort of highlighted the challenge needs to be also taken as an opportunity, especially when we talk about renewable energy transition, not just because it's an environment case, but we all fully understand that renewable energy in Pakistan is even a better economic and a business case, and that's pretty much what drives the transition. So we all know, fully understanding the totally, I mean, changing cost of the renewable energy resources, the tariffs of renewable energy resources, when we talk about the industrial sector and why it needs to transition. Why, I mean, definitely, you all would have heard about the carbon border adjustment mechanism and export compliances it has sort of led to. And now even the industrial sector actually wants to transition towards low carbon development. I mean, that's again, leave the environment aspect aside. This is all purely economics and why we need to sort of make this transition. So even for the industrial sector, this transition, even for Pakistan, that has become very important. On the one, in other hand, I'll sort of show you another infographic to explain this, but we all fully understand that Pakistan's, if renewable energy is not being developed at the utility scale, it is being developed tremendously, significantly at the off-grid scale, and we'll shortly be showing you some of the figures as well. So that is again an opportunity where we need to understand how this all links to the grid modernization and how it can actually be tapped very efficiently. Climate diplomacy, we all fully understand that Greater Pakistan is again about to submit its updated national determined contributions, NDC 3.2. That is again due in the next few months, and very glad to have Private Power Infrastructure Board, PPIB, with us, as they're also leading the mitigation aspect of Pakistan's NDC 3.2 as well. So now, this is again something that's really important. If we talk about renewable energy, you can see two trends at play. If you look at the utility scale renewable energy development, I'll sort of show you very quickly one of the slides I have taken from one of the renewables first report. But on the utility scale, we still have a very muted progress since ever. Only 2.6 gigawatt of uh, VRE is there. I'm sort of, as of now, I'm not including the large hydro. I'm mainly talking about solar and wind. So, I mean, a lot of challenges. We're facing a lot of wind curtailment issues. We're facing a lot of challenges in higher integration of renewable energy resources. But at the same time, and more important trend that we all are observing is how rapidly the solar PV uptake is happening in Pakistan. I mean, just to quote the figures of 2024, almost 16 gigawatt of solar PV capacity was imported. So, I mean, just look at the number, and this is entirely what we call what we say a transition that is entirely led by the people of Pakistan. So that really doesn't have a lot of the other engagements, and this is not net metered. This is again something that is happening entirely of the grid. So we need to understand these two trends that are sort of happening. So this actually shows what are the developments at the utility scale. The important point is that if you look in the last 3 years, there has been no financial closures. The investments have been there, but definitely over the past few years, given the challenges that do exist for the renewable energy sector, we face a lot of challenges in bringing more renewables up to the grid as well. So I believe the first question that's going to be for our discussion that we do today would be, how do we address the pressing issues of utility scale RE? And how does this grid modernization eventually contributes to that? Pakistan solar PV market, I believe I have already highlighted some of the figures, but the import have been increasing very rapidly. Total import values just in 2024 was almost $2 billion. Now, the interesting point which comes around when we talk about, since the today's dialogue is also sort of named as the potential opportunities for Chinese private sector, that you look at the utility scale development, you look at the off-grid development, both of them have been led by the interventions of China and Pakistan. I mean, if you look at only 2024, almost 90% of solar PVs that came to Pakistan were from China. It's now one of the largest Asian importer of Chinese solar products as well. And I believe, just to sort of again quoting renewables first here, this rapid solar PV uptake is again on the rise. And just on the 2025 figures that have been quoted up till now, sort of sums up to 25 gigawatt as well. So the second question I believe that would remain within the discussion is, how can grid modernization support this solar PV momentum that is happening? So that's, I believe, should be the second question which we'll sort of discuss over here as well. So I won't go into the details, because I believe that's why you people are all sort of sitting here. We have some very important role to be played by some key entities for investment facilitation. One of the great projects that have come to through the overall broader framework of G2G under the CPEC was through the interventions of PPIB, that is Matiari transmission line. So again, a very important role has to be with the PPIB. For T&D sector, we have the DISCOs, we have K Electric, but at the same time, we also have some very important and in Pakistan can particularly be de-risked? What should be the de-risking framework for these investments as well? And also at the a bit briefly, but also sort of scoping some of the financing instruments, particularly to support grid investments in Pakistan that can be developed. And I believe this is again a very first consultation in the long list of sort of the dialogues that we'll be doing. Definitely. This is with the transmission companies and the regulators and the stakeholders within Pakistan. Next dialogue will be through the involvement of many of the Chinese private sector that are currently operating in Pakistan. And last but not the least would be one role where sort of SJPI comes up is always to be develop this line of communications that exists between the Chinese investors as well as Pakistan, fully understanding that a lot of communication channels do already exist, but given the overall uncertainty the investment landscape is facing in Pakistan, a lot of will sort of try to play the role from the perspective of civil society. So this is again sort of the timeline. What we are here sitting here is just in the February where we have the first consultation, followed by which we do have a long program which will be explaining in detail as we go on further as well. So yeah, I believe this was pretty much, but we'll definitely make sure that since you are the important stakeholders to keep all of you in loop as we sort of start scoping this intervention. So yeah, thank you so much. I believe this was sort of the scene setting that we actually had to do with this. I'll be moving more towards the technical discussion and taking inputs from the stakeholders. But I believe SJPI just in the last few months sort of started doing a very initial scoping study on how grid modernization can sort of be supported through the Chinese investments. For this, we have a small presentation for which I'll sort of like to invite Mr. Mohammed Umar. Umar is currently working as a researcher at Sustainable Development Policy Institute and will be very briefly presenting the key findings of the study. And yeah, just to mention, we have been joined by Imtiaz Saab. Imtiaz Saab has joined us online as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Imtiaz Saab, for joining us. So I believe with this, Umar, it's over to you if you can please join us at the podium. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Ware, for setting the stage for today's discussion. And it's a pleasure for to be here, and I'm excited to share some critical insights of the Pakistan's energy landscape. So today I am presenting the presentation on short and long-run investment potential to support accelerated VRE grid integration at CPEC. So let's go towards the scheme of the presentation. The first one is the introduction, then the investment by Chinese in power sector. Third one is the overloading and transmission losses in NTDC systems. Next one is the optimum variable renewable energy integration analysis. And the third, last is the issues of wind curtailment and role of grid of microgrids. The second one is the transmission system expansion plan, which I briefly explained what are the key uptakes of the transmission system expansion plans. And the last one is the key recommendations and way forward. Now, first introduction. Since Pakistan has immense potential of renewable energy resources, which is around estimated around 29,000 gigawatts, but still we have 25,000 gigawatts installed in system. So there's a big difference, a gap which need to be addressed. And the second one is the grid inefficiencies of the NTDC system, which is around 2.5% during the last fiscal year of 2023-2024. And because of these losses, over 133 terawatts of generation we have lost in our system. And then the rising cost and solar shifts, as discussed, briefly discussed by Mr. Bed, very explainable, that the affordability also challenges which occurs at the 51-55% of the tariff hike increases, and therefore the most of the consumers are transitioning towards the solar systems. So that's why 1.4 billion of total imports during the last 4 years from 2020 to 2024. Next one is a very wonderful aspect. We are seeing that the declining grid demand. So currently, due to high cost of electricity, most of the consumers, as I said, that they are shifting towards the solar systems. So therefore, our during the last year, 10% drop we have seen in our system, which is mainly due to the solar net meters. So therefore, this declining amount is again a good opportunity for the VRE integration. And next one, for this purpose, the CPEC-driven modernization system can also helps, like in previously Lahore to Metairie line, which is a 660 kV line, helps to maintain the congestion losses, and also some kind of battery energy storage systems which can be used for the microgrids. And because it's the future is smart grids, microgrids, and the battery energy storage systems, which can make our grid more resilient and the power system more operational in transmission sectors. Now, I will explain the investments by Chinese in current power projects. So, according to CPEC, total 8. First, I will tell that most of the investments are based on generation side. So, completed projects includes only coal, which are 8 projects around 7,884 megawatts. For the VRE, including the solar and the wind, which is about 13 megawatts. And only one is invested in Metairie to Lahore HVDC line, which has evacuation capacity of 400 megawatts, which is still underutilized, and I will explain in the next slide. And the one hydro project of 720 megawatts. But the projects which are again in pipeline is 2 coal projects, 2 solar and wind projects, and 2 hydro projects. So we can see that according to the pie chart, most of the investments are of 27.77 billion is across estimated that transmission system holds only very few share, which is across 6%. So there's a high requirement for the grid modernization. That's why we are facing a lot of challenges during the we have a lot of investments in the generation side. So therefore, there's an immense need for the transmission systems. Now coming towards the anti-DC system losses. So as we can see, according to NIPRA's report, though yet the number of losses decreases from 2019 to 2020 from 2022 to 23. So in 2019 it is 2.76, but in 2022 to 23 it is about 2.42. So again in 2023 to 2024 it greatly increases to 2.25, which have already discussed that 133 terawatt hours we are lost in the system. So this is because of insufficient dispatch and this expansion of expensive northern power plants are overused and cheaper southern plants are underutilized. That's why the HVDC system Lahore to Metairie is again 38% of the 4,000 megawatts is still underutilized. And because of this, our tariffs for the HVDC lines is again lie at 97.83 billion in capacity payments and across 7.39 kilowatt hours. So as we can see, also see that the overloading status of the anti-DC systems, there's around 120 overload system added in the, which we cannot be able to show for the sustainability in the next few years. So now coming towards the main part of the study, which is we have used that VRE locational study proposed by World Bank. In this study, the study identifies the 41 optimal sites, and out of this, 73 potential sites, from which 38 solar and 3 hybrid sites were used. But for this study, we have developed the case for the scenario 3, because scenario 3 has the maximum capital efficiency of 157 percentage, because scenario 1 and scenario 2 has less capital efficiency. So the next results will be uploaded for the scenario 3. So according to scenario 3, we have main priority focus on the Sindh and Balochistan area, which have spot years of 2025 to 2023, which are used for the VRE locational study. And based on those results, we can easily see that total capacity megawatts selected in 2025 under scenario 3, that Balochistan has its optimum 6 sites were identified with maximum capacity of 710, and for the solar panels, and for the wind energy, Balochistan identifies that 50 megawatt capacity. And for the Sindh area, the megawatt capacity increases, and because Sindh has a very good potential for the VRE integration, so therefore it selects 10 sites for the solar PV uptake with capacity of 1,000 to 765, and for two slides were selected for the wind sites. And then now coming towards the VRE production share under scenario 3, we can easily see that in 2025 that Balochistan captures 34% solar and the 29% for wind. So and the wind during 2025, and this inside so there is an immense potential for solar, which is 66%, and the wind is 71%. In coming towards the 2030, the solar projection is about the 49%, and the wind is 35%, but the SIN at the same case leading with the 51% and the 65%. So this is all about the potential areas which are the used for the optimum study analysis. According to this study, SIN leads the potential for the VRE integrations. Now coming towards the issue of the wind curtailment, the role of microgrids. So as we know that wind curtailment, Pakistan corridor has immense potential of 50,000 megawatt, but only 1845 megawatts is installed. So this is because that we have overloaded transmission lines, and because of must-run plants, especially in the areas K2 and K3. And when the demand of ESCO during the winter season, which falls down to 2500 megawatts, then this curtailment issues exists. And therefore, we have curtailed the wind power plants, which also creates the non-project missed volume up to 39.5 billion rupees in 2023 to 2024, which is, as you can see in the graph, that in 2020 to 2020, it is 13.35 financial loss, but in 2023 to 2024, it is to 13 billion. So there, this we can see that if we continuously do not invest in the transmission sectors, therefore we can easily jeopardize the investments in the wind sector. So there is utter need for the microgrids, which can be used to install with battery energy systems, and can be initiated by under the CPEC. Now, coming towards the transmission system expansion plan, which NTDC introduced with the objective to expand the transmission lines, substations, and the related infrastructure to support power grid generation facilities. For this purpose, they introduced the 3 spot years for year-by-year expansion for 2027, 28 to 29, and 30 to 34, which I have chosen for the base to create the load flow base cases. And according to that, total ongoing and planned transmission facilities amount 13.6 billions for the newly proposed projects, and the total for the 13 for the existing facilities. And for the newly projects, it is about 5.6 billion for the. So mostly the investments are going across the power disposal of export regions, grid stations, some kind of transmission lines which need to be reinforced. So these kind of investments they projected, but yet not approved by NEPRA. So this document should be reviewed, and and also for that there's some kind of distributed generation which should be explored for this study. This is the holistically countrycal view, but we have to introduce some kind of microgrids involvement in this study. And now coming towards the final recommendations. So first one is the smart grid and advanced infrastructure. So Pakistan, now the world is going towards the smart grid solutions, because smart grid provides you an IoT-based solutions with multiple interfaces. So in this case, CPEC-based investment can allow us to make a complete structure for the grid integrity, reliability, and sustainability. So next one is the hybrid energy and the storage system. So the hybrid energy systems and the storage system is working. How it works, that the battery energy storage systems, which is the most prominent and the most popular, and sometimes which is working like an energy arbitrage. So what is the energy arbitrage? When we have the charging mechanisms during the peak hours, when battery prices, when the grid prices are low, we can charge the battery, and during the off-peak hours, we can during the off-peak hours we can charge the batteries, and during the peak hours we can decimate. So this kind of battery energy storage, energy arbitrage mechanisms can help in energy storage solutions, and also make some kind of potential for private investors. Next, the role of independent market system operators. Yes, we need some kind of open market for our systems, because currently we have a single buyer and single seller mechanism. When there are multiple buyers in our system, we can easily engage the investments from the Chinese perspectives and the Chinese manufacturers. We can easily integrate these kinds of investments under the independent system operators. And the next one is the cross-border energy trade and the HVDC infrastructure. So currently, only one HVDC line is initiated by Chinese, which is around 660 kilowatts. But in the future, we can also go for the cross-border electricity trade. We can use for our neighboring countries, Iran and India. But it all depends upon the political will which needs to be initiated. And I think we had a broader potential for, because India has low demand during the winter seasons, so we can easily transfer our powers to India, and also same for the case for the Iran. And so that kind of, because Pakistan is currently importing from CASA 1000, so therefore we also want to export to make our country more economical. So therefore, the cross-border electricity trade based on HVDC systems is also more reliable, because HVDC systems as compared to HVAC systems are more good. I think most of the experts know that the corona effects and the skin effect for the HVAC systems. So HVDC systems are more resilient to these, and the conductor restructuring is very efficient in the HVDC systems. So next one is the public-private partnerships and investment initiatives. So I think there is a lot of potential for the Pakistan, because Pakistan has liberal policies. We have SOR 827, which allows the manufacturers to go for the JVs. So because of JVs, we can include the technology transfer mechanisms in Pakistan, and it helps not only Pakistan but also the Chinese private investors. For this purpose, I propose that the green economic zones, because the green economic zones allows you to develop some kind of manufacturing facilities within Pakistan, because currently Pakistan has very less muscle for the local manufacturing assembly lines. So therefore, I think 9 to 10 manufacturers are local assemblers of solars are in Pakistan. And currently we do not have local manufacturer for wind sector. So therefore, if we can target those, we should initiate those green economic zones, just like in the Sindh and Balochistan area, which is a vast potential for VRE integrations and potentials. So therefore, the local assembly can be produced and can be utilized in these areas, which also helps in the job opportunities for the local industry, not only for the China, but also the Pakistan, because the current tariff regime of the USA and China, Pakistan is a favorable country to relocate Chinese investments, so that we together both go for the export market. And otherwise, we are completely exhausting our dollars, and imports are massively. And the last 20 years, I will analyze that at least 10 to 12% we have a share of exports of engineering sector, but dominated with 60% of textile sector. So in that case, this helps the Chinese investors to go for the localization of the particular VRE components, and the many kind of things we can do this. So this is all about me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Umar. That was a very insightful discussion. So I believe with this, we'll be moving towards more of a consultative discussion format, and and this is again where we sort of look forward to listening from you. What do you believe should be the priority? What you believe should be the place where the interventions needs to come in, especially when we talk about either in the utility scale, either at the off-grid scale, and how especially the Chinese sector can sort of support us. So in this session, we're very pleased to have with us, let me just very shortly introduce our initial speakers that we have. We're very pleased to have with us Mr. Syed Faizan Ali. We're very pleased to have with us Mr. Imtiaz Hussain Baloch. I'll sort of introduce each one of them as I sort of call him. Imtiaz Saab is a Director General at NEPRA. Mr. Adil Hamid, DG of Transmission Lines at Private Power Infrastructure Board. Mr. Erkam Ilyas, Manager Transmission Planning and Forecasting from LESCO, Lahore Electric Supply Company. Mr. Mohammed Ayub, the CEO of KPK Transmission and Gate Company. From the private sector, we have a message from Mr. N. Zuberi, the Senior Advisor at China Three Gorges, South Asia Investment Limited. And last but not the least, Mr. Badar Alam, who is currently the CEO of Policy Research Institute for Equitable Development, and I believe will also sort of take into account the final conclusions from Mr. Ahad Nazir, the head of Center for Private Sector Engagement as well. So I believe, again, the idea here is to have a very constructive sort of discussion that does at the end provides sort of a way forward. So just starting on the technical front, let me invite Mr. Syed Faizan Ali. Faizan Saab is working as a grid integration expert and digitization expert, power ICT expert, and RE expert on various initiatives. Is also serving on one of the Prime Minister's Solarization Committee as well. So thank you so much, Faizan Saab, for joining us. And I believe it would be much better that perhaps from here on the discussion, we actually sort of start is from the table just to make it more engaging. So Faizan Saab, again, we have seen a lot of the work that you have done, the studies that you have produced, especially around the integration of RE. So, I mean, perhaps our initial question would you be to sort of explain what challenges in Pakistan is Pakistan facing in integrating RE in its grid, and how this grid modernization theme that we're sort of talking about helps in overcoming these challenges, especially speaking for the rooftop solar and utility scale solar as well. And I believe the second part of the question would be sort of that links to the Chinese, that how can the Chinese private sector support these efforts? What specific technological innovations from China or other parts of the world could enhance grid stability and efficiency in that context as well? So once again, thank you so much, Faizan Saab, for joining us. Yeah, it's over to you.
Inviting. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's fine. So thank you so much, SDPI, for inviting on this very important topic. I've been advocating for the grid modernization since last many years, and luckily or fortunately now, a lot of stakeholders and not only the private sector stakeholders, but from the government side are also now discussing on it. First of all, before going into the details, I think we need to understand that what is our energy scenario at the moment, and what is our demand and supply scenario. So whether the key questions are whether we need the utility scale renewable energies, or more importantly, whether we need to have more renewable energies or any sort of energy into the system, because we are already at the moment surplus in terms of capacity. We have a lot of centrally procured power plants. And on top of that, now we have a lot of distributed solar coming in from the downstream of the network as well. So there are two different challenges which we are facing. We're not only facing from the central procurement side, but also facing from the distributed energy resources side as well. And to overcome these challenges, initially we need to understand what sort of challenges these pose to the grid. As far as the utility scale solar is concerned, well, utility scale solar is centrally controlled, so they do not pose as much of a challenge because they are more or less, installed, co-located, installed at a single area, and you can always control them centrally by giving instructions via the system operators. There are some other problems related to intermittency, but that can also be covered by installing, different sort of, quick fired ramp up generating stations or power plants. When we talk about distributed energy resources or distributed solar, that is where the important things comes up, and that is where the game totally changes, because these small scale distributed energy resources are spread across, a lot of area, regionally located across different cities, across different regions. So that is where the important control and monitoring techniques need to be deployed. So what are the key challenges which these distributed energy resources, specifically rooftop solar, poses, is that we need to understand. So I've been joined by my colleague here from LESCO, Arkham. He can second that there are a lot of feeders in the LESCO which are now facing a low power factor during significant portion of the daytime, specifically in posh areas like DHA, in posh areas like Gulberg, and there are other regions in Lahore as well. Similar things are being faced by Islamabad as well as regions in the city center regions in MEPCO. So there are a lot of now transformer burning incidents have quickened up or speeded up. Then we have harmonics as well due to lack of power quality, due to lack of quality inverters and equipment installed in these distributed solar power plants. One of the key problem which at the moment the distributed networks are facing is the reverse power flow. So during the daytime, there is a lot of reverse power flow which is being faced, so much so that even after self-consumption, a lot of power is being fed back to the upstream network, to the 132 kV power transformers, and so much so that even those power transformers experience negative loading. All these, when you sum up all these problems, on top of that, you have a very poor visibility of what is happening. All these instances which I'm mentioning these are recorded only after these things happen. So there is no real-time visibility at the moment on the distributed scale. As far as the utility scale is concerned, so there is some sort of visibility. And we have the ex-NPCC general manager here as well. He can also confirm during his talk that we do have the visibility of the problems associated with the utility scale. But in terms of the distributed solar, that is where the problems is really now coming up quickly, and the distributed networks are facing these problems. So with all these problems now defined, I've just laid out the pictures that what the issues are. I'll come to the solutions, not to the utility scale. I think somebody else can define those, but I'll more focus towards the distributed solar or the distributed network grid modernization solutions as well. So if we talk about the grid modernization in the distribution networks, I think we can segregate these problems into 6 areas. And each of these 6 areas, I'll just propose some sort of solutions, that what solutions in each of these areas is required. And whatever I'm proposing here, I'll tell you, not a single solution has been implemented at the moment in the distribution network. So once we talk about the grid infrastructure, the first is the grid infrastructure. So what modifications or what enhancements need to be done at the grid infrastructure? At the grid infrastructure, we need to implement smart meters. Right? We need to monitor the grid edge, that what is going on at the grid edge, which is the consumer level monitoring. Then we need to have the monitoring at the transformers level, which we call the distribution transformer monitoring systems, which the government calls it the asset performance management systems. So this is like one step further from the consumer, which is the transformer monitoring, where you have all these monitorings. And then on top of upstream of that transformer, you need the feeder level monitoring, that what is going on at the whole feeder, right? And these transformers and the consumers are connected to that feeder. So you need feeder level automation, you need feeder level modernization as well. Then this feeder is connected to the distribution grid. At the distribution grid, you need to implement SCADA systems. When we talk about SCADA, that's a complete system. So I'll just talk about the infrastructure of that SCADA system, which needs to be implemented. So you need to change your RTUs. You need to install RTUs. You need to install different sort of IED devices, which can gather all those happenings that is going on within that power distribution grid stations, and then they record it, and then they send it out to the control centers. You need sensors, you need auto reclosures, you need automatic switches in the feeder, and with this, you would have control over your the distribution automation over your distribution grid and the distribution feeders. The next step comes up with the ICT technology. So in terms of ICT technology, what you need to do is you need to define what sort of communication technology you need to implement in order to send all that data, which has been gathered from the consumer, from the transformer, and from the substation to your control centers. So that communication technology, at the moment, we're only using GSM or GPR devices, 4G, 3G technology, while there is a pilot going on in ISCO, they're using PLC technology as well. So that ICT technology we need to enhance. We need to bring in radio frequencies. We need to bring in, optic fiber in the distribution network, and also we need to bring in, there are other technologies like HPLCs, long range, LoRaWAN, wide area networks, which are implemented. So this is the communication infrastructure. So now you have the data, then you have the communication infrastructure in place. So the third comes the storage, the data handling or the data management systems. All this data, which is being transferred from the consumer or the transformer or the nodal substations, they need to be stored at some place, right? That is also missing at the moment. So PITC is now centrally controlling, but they are enhancing it. But at the moment, you have like 35, 37 million consumers. All that data needs to be housed somewhere, so that you need to develop a data strategy. And when we talk about data handling, you need to define where that data needs to be placed, whether it needs to be on the premises of the distribution companies, whether it needs to be on the cloud, that cloud needs to be public, or whether it needs to be private. That is totally missing at the moment. So you have these three important aspects which is missing. The fourth aspect is that once you get that data, then you need to devise what sort of digitization measures, what sort of software platforms you need to implement to get that data analytics out of that, whatever the information is coming from the field. In terms of digitization, that is where the real control happens. So once you get that data, you need to implement SCADA systems. In the SCADA systems, you need to have a platform of network management systems. You need to have a platform of outage management system. You need a customer information system, billing mechanisms. You need distribution, all these different sort of platforms combined to form a distribution management system. And that distribution management systems, when you add the platform of like DERMS, which is the distributed energy resource management systems, they become an advanced distribution management system. And then your utility becomes an advanced distribution utility. So the last platform which I mentioned was the distributed energy resource management. That is a very significant and very important platform which we need at the moment, because whatever is being installed in the grid at the moment, that is, you do not know how it is being catered for. You do not know how much energy is going into your system on real-time basis. So that DERMS platform will house all that data. All these net metered systems or non-net metered systems have to be, linked to that DERMS platform for a real-time visibility and control. So when we talk about these three aspects, four aspects, the fifth one is when you have all these things in place, then you need to do your fifth and sixth is that you need to do a modernized planning and modernized operations. So once you have all these control, you need to implement the modernized operation procedures. What are those procedures? So if you go back, you can see that a lot of advanced utilities have implemented fault location and isolation and restoration services. So what it happens is it automatically detects your faults, it isolates that portion of the network, and then it becomes a self-healing network, and then your crew can go there and implement the restoration techniques. You need workforce management systems where your workforce can immediately see where these issues are. Similarly, if you talk about modern planning, so once you have all these data, all these grid modernization techniques in place, you need a modernized planning solutions. What are those? You need to have hosting capacity analysis, where on a real-time basis, you need to know that what sort of energy can go into your system and come out from your system, whether you need it or not. And then you need the controls as well, where you can, differently tell your consumers that, okay, you can install maybe 5 kilowatt or 4 kilowatt instead of a 10 or 15 kilowatt systems. And then all these things, when you combine together, form the basis of a grid modernization or an advanced utility. So these are the technical aspects, right? So now where we're lacking at further two steps, which is the regulatory barrier and the financial barriers. So when we talk about the regulatory barrier, you would say there is no communication strategy which exists at the moment as I speak. There is no communication guideline mentioned by the regulator that how that data needs to come to the data handling or management area. Similarly, when you talk about data handling management, There is no clear-cut strategy that how that data needs to be managed, whether that needs to be placed in the distribution company, whether it needs to be placed in a central location. So much so that all these data at the moment is housed centrally in PITC, while the government is trying to privatize each of these entities. So if I'm a private purchaser and I try to purchase an organization, say ISCO, or maybe MEPCO, and I come to know that all this data is being housed at a public entity, I will never purchase that entity. I'll go for some other entity who has housed his own data. So these are some of the regulatory barriers as well. Another very important regulatory barrier is that all across the world, we have seen the grid modernization, innovations, and the push always comes from the top. You talk about Dubai, they have launched a Digital Dubai initiative. You talk about your neighboring country, India, they have a national smart grid mission program, which comes from the top. By the way, they're implementing around 250 million smart meters. We have only 35 million consumers. They're implementing 250 million smart metering program. So all this needs to come from the top. In our case, what we're doing is, this is all very regulated, in a very regulated environment, we're implementing it. And what is happening is that we're either here and there, we're getting some sort of loans. We're implementing those, and those loans are quite costly. Or what we're doing is we're putting them in yearly in our distribution investment plans, and then that burden goes into the tariff, converts into the tariff, and then the consumer have to pay those costs. So these are some of the regulatory barriers. When we talk about the financial challenges, the financial challenge is that these systems are quite costly. So if you talk about a division, maybe a division in LESCO or in MEPCO, that division might consist of around 200, 270, or maybe like 3 lakh consumers. So for that 3 lakh consumer, just the metering cost would be around 25 to 30 million dollars, right? And we have around how many divisions in LESCO? I think 42? 45 divisions. So if you multiply this 25 million with 45, you will come to know that it's a multi-million project. And then you have 10 distribution companies. And this, I'm only talking about the meters. I'm not even talking about the communication infrastructure. I'm not talking about the data management. I'm not talking about any digital platform. So you can see the potential of investment which is required in all this grid modernization. So what we need to do, the government has also made a committee to finalize the service provider model, or the PPP model. I'm one of the members, and what we're doing is we're now finalizing different models that how the investment can be brought in. As an example, what India is doing, because 250 million smart meters is no joke, right? So what they've done is they've launched a service provider model. So that service provider model is design, finance, build, own, operate, and then transfer. It's a 10-year service model. And then they shortlist the companies, the service providers, and then they're free to implement, design. But you need to give some sort of guidelines even to these service providers. So if you want to go towards this PPP model, you need to have some sort of guidelines, because otherwise, if I'm a service provider model, it's very easy for me to implement a communication technology based on GSM. Right? And if he's another service provider, he might be implementing a radio frequency model and XYZ. So you would have a mix and match. And after 10 years, when he transfers it to me, I'll be in a mess. So you need guidelines, you need regulatory, clear-cut signals that what needs to do. Chinese, last line I will say, our Chinese brothers can definitely help us because they are much more advanced. In fact, we have meetings with different Chinese technology vendors as well. Huawei is one of the leading ICT technology vendors. Similarly, this project which is being implemented in ISCO, the meters are from Kaifa Shenzhen. Kaifa Shenzhen is a Chinese technology manufacturer. There are other Chinese technology manufacturers as well. So I think there's a huge opportunity. I think I just gave you some idea that what is the level of opportunity which is in the field of grid modernization. Thank you.
Yes, wonderful, extremely. Yeah, please. Thank you. Thank you so much, Fazan Saab. You've wonderfully summed up the key challenges that do exist, but more importantly, thank you for providing that very extremely useful and technical solutions that you provided, definitely on 6 different fronts that I could very quickly catch up on. And lastly, and very importantly, where are we exactly lagging, and how do we actually address the whole regulatory and financial barriers that currently exist? So yeah, more than happy to sort of have further discussion around it. But yes, I believe now, thank you also at the end for highlighting the role, how the Chinese private sector and the Chinese brothers can sort of come into it. I believe with this, let me come towards our 2 distribution companies. I mean, one distribution company and the grid company that we have over here. I'll firstly be coming to a UPSAB and then to going towards LESCO colleagues as well. So once again, thank you so much for being with us. You have been, again, spent a very successful career at the National Transmission and Dispatch Company. You have also worked with the Chinese as well, and now you're, alhamdulillah, working as the CEO of KP Transmission Grid Company. So, I mean, in your overall sort of experience that you have, and since you have been with all of the key entities, how do you think in China's experience in grid modernization be leveraged to address these energy challenges that we have talked about? And also, how can the ensure that the renewable energy potential that exists very much at the provincial level, especially when we talk about KPK, when we talk about Balochistan as well as Sindh, that can actually be very efficiently integrated into the national grid despite the geographic and the infrastructure challenges that do exist in these areas. And further, if any points you would like to sort of highlight beyond this as well. So with this, thank you so much for joining, and it's over to you.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Mr. Fizan. I think Mr. Fizan has explained very well our infrastructure and our weak point and whatever the operational points due to which we cannot be able to inject our renewable energy in our system. As per our policies, as you know, that up to 2030, we are aimed to inject at least 30% of renewable energy in our system. But the big question is that how it is possible and how we can manage it. So I think Fizan has very well explained the things. And because I remain in NTDC for about 37 years, and I mostly work for operation, maintenance, protection, commissioning, testing, planning, every discipline I have watched. And you see that the big problem in our system is the planning. First of all, when we have a lack of generation in late 2016, 2015, when we have a shortage of power, so we are focused on generation, and then we make a big generation, and then we are now sufficient generation available. But meanwhile, we have not planned too much our transmission expansion plan. And but I think that Chinese are our real friend, and they always help us in getting a big plan of generation as well as for transmission. I am proud that for first 660 kV HVDC line, which was commissioned, I have supervised all these operational activities. And then, first of all, that test was failed. And then, secondly, when I was promoted as DMD, and I was given this challenge that you have to pause this testing and supervise it, and we need this line up to September 2022, I think. So at that time, this was a big challenge. You see that this 660 kV HVDC line is 4,000 megawatt potential. And the planning was that for running this HVDC line, first time in Pakistan, this will be a hybrid transmission. We need at least 12 transmission 500 kV lines in southern area, and at least we have 6 lines in our Punjab area. So at that time, there was only 8 transmission lines which were available in south for 500 kV, and only 4 was in Lahore, which was a Lahore's new 500 kV transmission line. So at that time, it was big challenge for us that how we can get 4,000 megawatt from south to north area. The issue is that our geographical map is like this. Our longitudinal, geographical longitudinal area is that one. That we have both in south and in north we have a generation, but at the mid of the north we need a load. So ultimately we have to make planning in such a way that during the summer season, when we have a potential of hydel available, we take power from north, and then when in winter season, when we have a very small potential available for hydel, we have to take the energy from south. So for when we get the energy from south, we have to travel a lot, and we have to cover transmission line losses also, about 1,000 kilometer line, which is giving the power from that area. So all these challenges we have to face. And then you see that when we have decided that we should have a HVDC line. So you see that for HVDC line, we have a line losses about 3.5%, whereas if it is an AC line, it's had a more than 17% line losses. So what during testing, when there was a COD of that line, we have achieved our line losses of 2.5%, which was a very good one. But the problem was that how we will transfer this 4,000 megawatt to our system in a load area. So we have to test the line in two ways. First, we have taken one line and then we checked for 2,000 megawatt, and then second line and 2,000 megawatt. In this way, we have completed this one. Now, the operational problem, what I am talking about is that we have no reactive power compensation control available in our system. This is one of the big challenge. But we say that static VAR compensation, we have still not have an accurate measurement that what should be the level of reactive power which will be injected along with the active power to get the full active power in our system. That is the big constraint for us for transmission purpose. And this transmission can only be achieved through our automation system and our grid digitalization system. And we have worked on it, and Alhamdulillah, during my period, we have started SCADA 3 project. And first was a SCADA 1, which was a partially completed, then SCADA 2, it was failed, and then SCADA 3, we have almost 70% is now covered. For the getting accurate power, accurate measurement, low losses, and to avoid our old substations system, we need this SCADA and automation. So this is one of the big field for which we are looking to Chinese also. And they are helping us on this for the grid, smart grid technology. And you see that smart grid technology, as Mr. Faizan has already explained it, this has a 3 level. You see, but very simple. First is the process level, then we have a bay level, and then we have a station level. And he has explained this one, that what is process level, that we have to start from the equipment like CT, PT, transformer, everything. They have a sensor controlled. So we have to go on to that one, that we have a sensor control system. Then we have a bay level, then we have a microwave processor, which will process all these things. And then station level, a person is sitting and monitoring everything and getting the feedback of everything. So in this way, we have so many advantage that we will get rid of our control power cables. We don't need that one. Sensor will work this one, and that the price will also be reduced. Then second one is the accurate measurement will be available. Your losses will be reduced. You have a 24-hour monitoring of the system is on the system. Then we have a preventive maintenance. The system will tell us automatically that this one is going to be exhaust, this one is going to be fail, and you have to do this one in the time. So in this way, we unluckily still not, we have any automation grid station at present available. So we have to plan this one, that now for the old one has so many other challenges, that they have old equipment, old control cables, and these one, they have to be changed. Old circuit breakers, they have no auxiliary contact available for getting this sensor and like this one. But the new one, we can do this one. And for new one, we can use this technology. And for this one, we are looking investment from Chinese also. And if they are giving us this integrated system, microwave system, uh, uh, as they have in their system, in China, they are using this one. So it will be a very good investment for us in Pakistan.
Yes.
Then the second one is the renewable energy. Renewable energy, you see that we are at the present is about 5%, 5-6% in our system. Is still, this 5% is not controlled by us. As the guys say that we have a curtailment of wind, and we have, because wind is a must run sources, and we are not using it 100%. It's a lot of other operational points, which is also I want to mention. That first is that reactive power compensation, which is available. Then infrastructure of our transmission lines. We have a not integrated system, which is available for getting the full 100% power from that one. Another is the issue of tariff. No doubt, we have a cost plus, and the other old wind plant, they are much expensive. Their tariff is about 27 rupees to 35 rupees per unit, which is very expensive one. It's more than RFO plant. So that's why the curtailment was there. Not it was due to our lines, but most of the time when they have a problem of HISCO or SEPCO, they are not getting the full power from that system. So that system power come to our upper side on our 500 kV and then create a problem for us to control that one. So that's why we make that restriction for this one. So for renewable energy, what I think that we should do like this, that we should make an isolate system. And we have to see the load. Where we have a load, we have to inject the renewable energy power on that point also. Like in Balochistan, like in Sindh, we can go to small provinces, villages, where we can easily give them in a 11 kV system. Not we have to go to up to 132 kV system or even 500 or 220 kV system. Yes. So it will be much better, much easy solution for renewable energy to be injected in our system. Then the third one is the, no doubt, the policies. We have a very different policies. We are bound of IGCF. IGCF plan does not include most of the plants. So we have to make such policies that we should improve our PPP partnership mode. So that mode will give us a good relationship between the other persons who are coming and investing in our system. So these are the big things which I think we should be look on into it, and then we can get a more investment. There is a lot of potential here for investment. You see that our old system has to be changed. All discos companies, if they want to have a SCADA system, they should have the OPGW wires. Optical fiber wire is the must, one basic item which is required for a SCADA system. So they have to change that one. They have to make some investment. And that investment can only come, as Mr. Faizan Saab told us, that it should be like a PPP mode or something else mode, which can initiate the persons that if you want a stable power supply, you have to make a good control. You have to make this one like this.
Yes. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ayub Saab, for sharing the developments, the challenges, and a round of an applause, please. So thank you so much, Ayub Saab. And I think a lot of it makes sense, and a lot also resonates with, I believe, what Faizan Saab also sort of mentioned. So taking discussion, Faizan Saab, will come to you a bit later as well. There are two questions that are in the chat box that are mainly for you, and both of them have your name tagged with it. The first is that, is it possible to monitor the distribution transformers, and what sort of monitoring system could you sort of suggest? This is from Shakil Ahmed. And then another is from Yasir Saab, which said that, is there any data on off and on feeders available transparently on a map perhaps as well? So once later you can perhaps sort of try to respond to this as well. But I believe we're very also pleased, just before coming to PPIB, we do have Lesko sitting with us here as well. So thank you, Arkam Ilyas Saab, He's currently working as the manager of transmission planning and forecasting at Lahore Electric Supply Company. And thank you, Erkam Saab, from traveling all the way to here. I was really interested in joining the debate as well. So, I mean, taking this whole debate from a distribution company perspective, I mean, just like Faizan Saab also highlighted, I also sort of showed you the two key trends that are in place. So, for a distribution company, what do you think are most pressing transmission challenges you face that could sort of arise in integrating renewable energy into the national grid? And how do you think uh, tools such as what Faizan Saab has also mentioned, advanced grid technologies, that can sort of address those issues? And also, one of the questions that we also sort of requested you to respond is, how do you see the role of smart grids and HVDC systems in enhancing LESCO's capacity to manage RE integration in light of Lahore Matiari transmission line projects and project, and how will this contribute to improving grid stability and efficiency as well? So thank you so much once again for joining us, and with this, over to you.
Much bad, and I'm really happy to join this conversation and share insights into this. So, firstly, I would just like to, explain like a few years back, the only challenge with the transmission grid was the ample capacity to deliver power from the generation sites to the load centers. And a lot of work has been done in upgradation the transmission system, in the primary transmission as well as the secondary transmission and the distribution system. But now, as we are seeing these days, we have a lot of rooftop solar integration into the distribution grids, as Faizan has already highlighted. So, just to share some insight, you have already shared the data as well. We have, a lot of substations where on average, we have a solar PV penetration of more than 40 to 50 megawatts. So this is huge, and all these systems are rooftop solars installed on, how rooftops of residential houses or, commercial building. It's not, clustered into concentrated solar systems. So these systems are now becoming, as a collective, these are huge. And what is happening in the light loading conditions is all these distributed solar systems are supplying power back to the distribution system, and then the energy is flowing back to our transmission grid, primarily secondary transmission grid, and it is flowing back to the 132 kV level. So this is a huge challenge, and going forward it will become worse and worse. So one of the ways what we feel like is, this will be a mess, or this will be a headache for us being the utility company to address this. And, because as Faizan has highlighted, we do not have, the real-time monitoring at our distribution system. We do not have, sensors or even devices. But like once we don't have monitoring, then we do not have the control as well. So obviously this is the need of the hour, that we must install smart meters at these premises, and even distribution transformers, or even our substations, and then we have the real-time data of all the energy flowing into the system, and the parameters which are being disturbed, like the power factor. Faizan has highlighted that during the peak production of solar systems, our power factor dips around 0.6, 0.7, which is pretty bad compared to the requirement of 0.9 or 0.95 from the regulator, or that thing. So what I feel like is, now going forward, what we need to do is we need to look into things, as we have seen the data for the wind systems. You have shared that approximately 40 billion rupees is just the NPMV number for the last fiscal year for non utilization of that wind energy available. So the same situation is going to happen for the distribution grid as well, where you have these rooftop solar, just like mini PPAs we have, or EPAs we have already in place. So one of the way forward is to look forward and install a battery energy storage system at our substations. It would be small systems like 1, 2, 3 megawatt hours, or 5 up to 5 megawatt hours, because we have the space available at these substations, and we can make use of these energy storage systems to store the surplus energy during the daytime, which is available, and the same can be sent back to the consumers when the sun is not available, like some time in the hours of 6 to 8 p.m. So this will not just, make a commercial sense for these battery energy storage systems. And obviously, when it comes to how we are going to finance this, so utilities, they are not ready at the moment to, take this challenge and, install these battery energy storage systems, this is where we have this, public-private partnership, which will be instrumental in, changing this landscape. Like we will have private investors coming in, and a lot of Chinese companies, they have the expertise and they have the, financial muscle to offer services as battery as storage systems or as a service, or even in, public-private partnership models. So anything can be worked out. And so this is one of the way forwards to, keep going forward with solar penetration and, keep taking forward the grid as well at the same time without, harming the grid or, creating issues of instability in the grid. And one other thing, as which Faizan has already highlighted about the smart meters and, which is the backbone of smart grid system. So obviously, once we have made, the investment plans, and what we see is there's huge potential for deployment of smart meters, and the numbers which we have worked on is like, because it requires huge investment, but again, on the revenue side, or on the payback period is around 3 to 4 years for these systems when you deploy and, you are just up and running. So this is the huge potential where, we require the investment, but we are, constrained by the funds available with us. And obviously, these are the, foreign investments, and all the equipment is not being manufactured in Pakistan. So we do not have, foreign currency issues as well. So this is where we can, tap into the potential from the Chinese companies to look forward into this. And lastly, as far as, you have mentioned about the HVDC, and because Mr. Ayub has already highlighted that this has, significantly strengthened our primary transmission as well as the secondary transmission system. Like we have the capacity to bring in the cheap power from the south, from the wind power plants, and even the third coal power plants right into the, load centers in Lahore, some Multan and Faisalabad region. So this has really helped us a lot in terms of providing the improved reliability as well as, bringing in the power right into the load centers. And going forward, we definitely needs to, look into the flexible AC transmission system, HVDC, SVCs, and other reactive power control systems, where we definitely need, the real-time monitoring and real-time control. Obviously, that also requires a lot of investment. So multilateral donors are already there. They are helping a lot. But even the Chinese can be, bring into this domain, and they can help out to, finance those projects in terms of public-private partnerships, and, take the ownership for those as well. So that is something which I wanted
Yes,
to add.
this is wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Arkam Saab. Again, extremely important points, especially coming from the discourse perspective, and we'll make sure to sort of incorporate that. So with this coming towards, again, I believe, thank you, everyone has highlighted the financing interventions that would be required. So coming to, and especially again, when we're talking about the Chinese, one key aspect I believe needs to be catered into is that now any developments that happen through the Chinese support needs to perhaps move beyond just government to government or the G2G model to move towards even a business to business or a B2B model as well. And again, in the whole domain of attracting Chinese investments, PPIB, Private Power Infrastructure Board, has a very important role, especially when we talk about, I mean, one of the projects that happen in the transmission transmission domain as well. So we have been joined by Mr. Adil Hamid, who's currently the Director General Transmission Lines, Private Power Infrastructure Board, PPIB. Sir, thank you once again for joining us. So, I mean, taking lead from the discussion that has happened till yet, I mean, how do you see the role of these public-private partnerships in driving grid modernization and uptake of these RE projects within the CPEC? And how can PPIB sort of play its very important role in streamlining the process for private sector investments in grid modernization projects, particularly those focused on enhancing the integration of RE, like solar and wind, into the national grid of Pakistan? So with this, thank you once again, sir. So over to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vaid. And before I start giving my inputs, it would be injustice if I don't appreciate really SDPI and its leading role, even in guiding the public sector institutions. They've always taken initiatives which have helped us a lot. And I remember that a year ago, we also were successful in developing a roadmap for Pakistan power sector, especially in the context of environment and in enhancing renewable energy into the system. So SDPI has always been very instrumental, and I must appreciate them. And now coming to the topic of this discussion today, there are a few things that we have already discussed about the grid modernization, and my learned speakers have already identified, rather over-identified the issues faced by the system. And in the context of Chinese investment, it is also important. And when it comes to PPIB, first of all, I would like to for the information of those who are lesser aware of PPIB's role, I would like to inform that the government of Pakistan has various entities, including PPIB, who have their distinct roles and responsibilities. Like Mr. Ayub has rightly pointed out, the transmission infrastructure details, and many other learned speakers have identified the issues we are facing in the process. So what we do, we see that if we talk of energy transition, because to me, modernization of the system, even other than transition, is also very important in the context of Pakistan, because when we see our infrastructure, it needs a lot of investment to upgrade and to replace the obsolete equipment, or to remove the bottlenecks that we are facing right now. But this is the point where we come in and we jump in the context of investment. And when we talk of transition, let me tell you, I don't like telling it, but transition comes at a very high cost if we speak of the economic situation here. So not only that the high cost is involved, but we also need to consider the capacity of our consumers, because ultimately the burden of this modernization and enhancement and augmentation of the system, it has a cost, and most of it primarily would go to the consumers somehow. So while we are already in a situation where the consumers feel overburdened by the hefty bills they receive, so from the government point of view, we also need to consider that how much investment in a time can be made, which can be absorbed in the system. We are already underway certain things, negotiations with the IPPs, especially it's not just because of the pricing, it's because of the technological advancements and other things, like we see the RFO running out of the system, we see the coal prices and LNG prices going high due to Corona in the last few years, and other things like that. So there are various aspects that from government point of view, we always need to keep in mind, like to what extent we can do at a particular point in time. So while I would like to mention that PPIB's role, other than being part of the overall supervisory mechanism of the government of Pakistan, our role is particularly important in terms of seeking investment from private sector. So private sector investment, it's efficient. It's very efficient considered as compared to public sector performances. But it is considered that it has a relatively higher cost as compared to the public sector management of things. So what we do, PPIB, especially for those who are lesser aware of PPIB, what we do with that, when the system planners, like in case of transmission, NTDC, which happens to be the system operator, and they own the transmission assets as well. They have very good team of professionals who keep an eye on these things. But investment point of view is important in the context of Pakistan's financial situation. So we do everything carefully. So while there are still projects being developed in the public sector, PPIB is also playing its role to the extent it is possible to be absorbed in the system. So what we do is that we coordinate with the entities, with the planners, like in case of transmission, we keep a close liaison with the NTDC to see what projects could be suitable for private sector development. We have been successful in attracting investments over $35 billion in the last 2 decades. But this investment obviously comes with the price as it is coming through private sector. So there are obviously certain questions being raised, especially in the given context where the prices seem to be quite high in the region. So we have been successful in attracting investments, and especially in the context of China's role. I must appreciate the role of China played during last, especially decade or even more than that, because the most chunk of the investment coming into the coming into the power sector, not only limited to the CPEC, but other than CPEC projects, which the Chinese are working directly, they make the lion's share out of these investments. So we must appreciate China's support throughout this period. And in the CPEC, we also have a considerable chunk of projects that came through CPEC. Like so far in the last 6-7 years, PPIB has been successful in establishing 23 power projects of more than 12,000 megawatts and a huge transmission line, that is Matiari-Lahore transmission line, which has a carrying capacity of 4,000 megawatts. That 4,000 megawatt HVDC line alone was worth an investment of $1.65 billion. So you can imagine the amounts and the investments involved in these transactions. These are highly capital intensive projects. So while we established various coal and hydro projects and the transmission line projects, we are also working through Chinese support in the renewable energy projects. And we have established a number of renewable projects amounting to around 800 megawatts. So where we need to go, while if we consider the hydro power projects part of the renewable energy, at this point in time, we stand at about 31% share of the overall energy production in Pakistan based on renewable energy, while we are looking towards a 53% share by end of 2034. So that will be a huge jump, and it will entail a lot of more renewable energy and, of course, the hydropower including. While we are considering this part, we also have to, being the government of Pakistan, it is important for us to see the indigenization factor. So at one point, at one side, we are looking towards renewable energy induction. On the other side, we are also looking into having projects which are based on our indigenous resources other than renewable energy, that is the local coal-based projects that we are also working on. So from the investment point of view, before that, I must say that, as Mr. Ayub has rightly pointed out, the geographical constraints that Pakistan faces, like we have thermal generation in south, and we have hydropower in north, and the load center somewhere lies in the center. So the role of transmission is very important, and we cannot get rid of the losses associated with these transmission and evacuation of these projects altogether. Though we can modernize the system to bring them to a minimum level that is possible. And also that, like we discussed, the induction of solar PV and other renewable sources. So what we see that from the supply side, while we have a constraint that the system supply becomes limited during the daytime when the high induction of solar rooftop has been added, and also the off-grid solar systems adopted by the industries or other consumers. So that has an impact. And also there is another impact that is on the distribution side, like the overloading of the systems or the loading capacity of the systems, and modernization of all these systems would be required for this. So all these things simultaneously need to be catered for. And now comes the point where we need to see how the investors or the private investors, especially the Chinese brothers who have been supporting us throughout this period, how their investment can be further tapped in. So in the transmission side, like we have in the generation side, we have a power generation policy. For the transmission in 2015, the government introduced 2015 policy. So far, we have been successful in implementing the first ever private sector project that was Matiari-Lahore transmission line. And it was not only the first ever private sector line, it was the first ever HVDC line, so which is providing us with a parallel path of power evacuation from south to north. And it also is helpful in overcoming the blackouts that we sometimes face due to the transmission or issues or cascading effects in the system. So it has also provided a reliable means to avoid that to the extent possible. So we have a policy already in place through which we provide various incentives for all sorts of transmission related projects. In 2023, the government also enhanced its scope. And while we already have the option of implementing 220 kV and above transmission projects and related equipment, the government has enhanced its scope to include the ancillary services. So through this enhancement of scope, we see that there are many other projects which are essential for the modernization of the grid and the stability of the system. This provision will also be helpful in augmenting augmenting and expanding the transmission system. Let me briefly tell you about the priority the government, the projects on which the government is taking high priority. Like Mr. Ayub mentioned, that we have issues in evacuating power from south, especially the wind corridor based energy generation. So there are 4 key projects that the government is concentrating on, which include a 500 kV double circuit transmission line from Ghazi Barotha to Faisalabad, a 500 kV circuit transmission line from Matiari to Moro to Rahim Yar Khan. This is specifically being implemented for evacuation of power generated through wind resources. We also have 2 other projects, one of reactive power compensation and another of battery energy storage. These 2 projects will also be implemented to help evacuate the renewable energy based power, especially the wind, where we are currently facing curtailment. So we just discussed the triple P mode. Currently, the government, PPIB, NTDC, we are all sitting together with the World Bank to see what possible modes of implementation could be brought in, which would not only enhance the implementation of such projects, but would also bring the price together of the transmission. We are currently, we appreciate the role of World Bank, IFC, and they are in collaboration with Asian Development Bank, considering the modalities to be worked out for implementation of this 500 kV Matiari Moro Rahim Yar Khan transmission line. And we hope that not only this will be implemented shortly, and it will be helpful in evacuating power from the wind projects, but will also give us some relief in terms of transmission costs due to the involvement of certain other mechanisms like climate financing, like viable bank guarantee financing and other resources through the international institutions. So we hope that we all together will be able to get Pakistan out of this current crisis where we have high prices and system curtailment issues. Thank you very much.
Yes, perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Adil Saab. Again, this is one of the most technical and meaningful discussions that we have on around the grid. So thank you all. Yeah, I'll just definitely a lot of very important points, but let us sort of one key stakeholder that we do miss is in any discussion that happens around the planning, we sort of forget before again, Imtiaz Saab, I'll be coming to you after this one, but before coming to Imtiaz Saab, so let's sort of also see what the whole discussion that we're doing means for the people of Pakistan. I believe Adil Saab has also sort of touched upon that. I mean, definitely the solar PV rush that we have been seeing is happening because of that the people actually thought that that is a comparatively much more cheaper form of electricity generation, electricity that they can afford, even going completely out of the grid. We have seen examples for that as well. So we do, I mean, the people come over here. So we're very pleased to have with us Mr. Badar Alam Saab, who's currently working as the Chief Executive Officer, CEO of Policy Research Institute for Equitable Development, Pride, also very key partner in the whole program that we have sort of started, because we want the discussions and some of the key interventions that we put forward very people centric as well. But at the same time, Pride also has some very good technical expertise with their team also sitting over here. So, but Badasab, from our, and perhaps moving a bit beyond the technical discussions, we have wonderful interventions. How do you, I mean, see this Chinese private sector investments ensuring grid modernizations and RE integrations are equitable and beneficial to the marginalized regions such as those in Sindh and Balochistan as well, and how we can sort of ensure that these marginalized regions can benefit from this energy transition in those areas. So yeah, looking for more of a human-centric response from your end as well. So thank you so much, Badasab. Over to you.
For inviting me to this wonderful panel discussion. I think there are 3 points that I would like to highlight. One is that we have talked about the distance or the differentiation between where our load centers for electricity consumption are and where our electricity generation is located. All the electricity generation is located either in north, which is hydel, or in south, which is mostly fossil fuel based, but also partially wind. So how has that come to be the situation that all the generation is in the extreme poles of the country and all the like consumption is in the middle? Is it like that? Has it happened just like an accident? Or is it because of certain planning that the governments have been doing since the 1950s, in which all the industrialization was done in the center of the country and all the resource exploitation was done in the extreme north and extreme south of the country? Is it a political question or is it a technical question? Is it a financial kind of a problem or a problem of political economy? I think this is where the mess that we are in lies, that we always thought of all these things in a technical sense. We always thought that there was some kind of a financial solution available and we could like bring that financial solution and all the problems will go away. They will never go away, even with the best of the intentions and with the best of the investments in grid modernization or renewable energy, whatever you call it, unless we address the core question, which is the question of political economy. Right now, as we are talking in this room, people in Deamir Bhasha are protesting against WAPDA for not paying them compensation for the lands taken away from them for a hydropower project. Whether hydro is renewable or not, that is another debate. But hydro has displaced thousands of people across this country. In Tarbela, in Mangla, people have been asking for this compensation for the last 50 years. Now, make any investment in any part of the country, if it is not just, if it is not fair, if it is not equitable, if it is not in the interest of the people whose lands have been taken, no solution will ever work. So beyond the technical side, we need to take into consideration another example. Pakistan has been trying to set up a solar power plant in Muzaffargarh for the last 3 years. And there have been multiple auctions and failed bids and stuff like that. But the land has been already taken. The government has already taken land from the farmers and farmers are protesting against that land acquisition. So for 3 years, they have been deprived from their land for a project that is not materializing. So even if you give them RE, you're giving them solar energy, you're taking away their lands. So first of all this transition towards a modernized grid, towards renewable energy needs to be just, it needs to be fair, it needs to be equitable, it needs to address the rights and needs of the people whose resources are being used, number one. Number two is that Pride has recently done 2 studies. One is about demand and supply difference in Noshki district, right next to Quetta. Very, very difficult area to even do a research study because of the insurgency and other law and order problems. But we found out that people there have a similar kind of electricity demand that people in Model Town Lahore have. But they never get the electricity that Model Town Lahore gets. Model Town Lahore might be getting electricity for 16 to 18 hours, whereas they are getting electricity for 2 hours. And now see the contrast. Contrast is that electricity produced by Uch power station in Balochistan from natural gas is always on the top of the merit order. it's around 10 to 12 rupees per unit. But the electricity being sold to Balochistan is around 60 to 70 rupees per unit. So where's the justice? Where's the fairness? Where's the equity? And they get electricity for only 2 hours. And then look at the massive mess that we have created in the planning of electricity sector. In Balochistan, there are at least 2 massive generators that are producing electricity since 1980s, because Kuwait gave us those generators 40 years ago. 40 years afterwards, their generation capacity has become almost like nil, but we are still using diesel for generating electricity from those plants. And we never use that land for those plants for putting up solars to provide to the same communities, even when the solar's price is like 9 rupees per unit or maybe even less than that. So that is the mess that we are in. And if we really want to get out of that mess, I think on such tables, we need to bring in people whose lives are really been like determined and even destroyed by the energy policies that we're making in these rooms. Number one. Number two, I think there is also a very strong financial as well as political economic case for the Chinese investment to try to address these problems. First, the financial case. Pride has done a study about 2 power plants which were run on fossil fuels, one in Muzaffargarh, another also in Kotaddu. And we found out that if we could convert those power plants, repurpose those power plants as solar power plants, there is a massive financial gains to be made. And there are Chinese companies that are interested in doing that. In fact, in one of the cases, the work is already going ahead. But in the other case, instead of allowing the Chinese company to do the repurposing, the government extended the license of the fossil fuel-based power plant. So there is a financial case for the Chinese companies to come in and repurpose these plants. I'll give you the example of another plant. It is called Habibullah Coastal. It is located near Quetta. It has been not working for many, many years now. Zero electricity generation, but land is there, everything is there. Why can't we repurpose it? If we can repurpose a plant in Muzaffargarh with Chinese investment, I think there is also a strong case for repurposing Habibullah Coastal with the Chinese investment. So this is the financial side of it. The political economic side is China cannot invest in a Pakistan which has massive law and order problems. And in some cases, let's be honest, Chinese investment has been utilized in this country that has created more conflict than it has addressed. Like, for instance, if you look at the road corridors that have been built with CPEC, all of them are in the eastern side of the country and none of them in the western side of the country. So who is benefiting from that? All of us Punjabis sitting in central parts of the region. So if we continue to do such unfair, iniquitous investments through Chinese companies will find it very difficult to operate in many parts of the country. And this is an obvious fact. Chinese have already complained about it. So there is a political economic case that the Chinese companies are allowed or helped or even like given assistance to make investments in areas where their investment is really needed. For instance, Gwadar, we talk about Gwadar a lot. But how many renewable energy projects have we planned for Gwadar? None. We have planned one 300 megawatt power plant in Gwadar, which is coal-based. And it is not local coal-based, it is foreign coal-based. Similarly, there are so many other examples that can be done. But I think there is a political economic case for the Chinese to be investing in those areas which are marginalized. And there is a financial case as well. For all of us, I think the point to ponder is that no technical solution will ever work unless it is accompanied by thorough anthropological, sociological, and political research and strong input by the stakeholders who can do all this research for us. Thank you.
Yes, very good. Extremely to the point, Barasab, and that's why we had Barasab as well, that within the whole discussion, the people for any policy planning process, definitely there's a technical side, but what we're targeting towards needs to be very people-centric, and that's how you sort of make both the economic environment and this, importantly, the social case for it. So thank you so much, Barasab, for highlighting the political economy angle. So with this, again, very pleased to have Imtiaz Saab. You're with us since the morning. You have listened to the debate and the discussion coming in from the distribution companies, transmission grid companies, civil society, as well as our experts. So also, we initially sort of showed you some of the slides that the theme that we're sort of trying to pitch over here. So, I mean, coming from the role of the regulator, what measures, I mean, firstly, if you can sort of respond to the discussion that has happened, but also what measures can be taken to address the technical and financial bottlenecks in integrating VRE into the Pakistan's existing grid as well, and how is NEPRA's role in creating an enabling environment for Chinese private sector investments in grid modernization and RE technology. So thank you so much. With this, over to you, Imtiaz sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on a very important issue. I must appreciate that speakers have spoken their heart and have highlighted various issues and their solutions. As a regulator, NEPRA is striving its best to fix the issues that our sector is facing. And luckily, we have an amendment in the 2018 whereby the NEPRA Act was amended. You may be knowing that in the original act, there was an exclusivity for the distribution companies as well as for the transmission companies. But after that amendment, there is a radical change in the sense that exclusivity for the distribution companies has been taken away. And now the distribution license is granted to these distribution companies are non-exclusive in nature, which means that any party can lay their transmission lines and feeders to augment the existing system of the country. And we were lucky in the sense that the legislator thought that interesting the whole development of the power sector in terms of the major infrastructure that NTDC used to have been doing now required to be supplemented with the provincial grid companies. And up till now, we have granted 3 licenses for the provincial grid companies, including Sindh, KPK, and Punjab. Stakeholders are, speakers here rightly pointed out the issue that we have faced in terms of the planning. Yes, luckily now we have made a first step in the sense that now we have an indicative generation capacity expansion plan. And the previous regime that where we were issuing LOIs to various entities for the development of the generation plant is actually no more valid in the sense that we have procurement regulations in place and the indicative generation expansion plan, and on the basis of which we have approved the power acquisition programs for these utilities. And another step further has been taken in the sense that now authority has made obligatory on the part of NTDC as system planner that it will be requiring to submit not only the IGSEP on a yearly basis, but that IGSEP is to be accompanied by the transmission system expansion plan as well. So with that, unfortunately, we have been able to actually approve that, but at least the first step has been taken where that the IGSEP and the TSEP are to be approved simultaneously. So with all this IGSEP, TSEP, which is integrated system planning, exclusivity of DISCOs being taken away, and that other parties can also participate, our rules and regulations are actually neutral in the sense that any party, which obviously have to follow the policy and plans, can make an SPV and make its contribution by having the transmission lines or the grid constructed, as has been done in the case of HVDC. As the speakers have told that it's a very complex subject in the sense that these are all capital intensive kind of things. Only the HVDC, which is one line actually, its whole budget is actually almost equivalent to the whole budget of the NTDC. So we have to be very careful while offering these transmission line infrastructure in the private sector to be careful, and there should be a business case to go for all such kind of venture, and a cost benefit analysis, proper analysis should be carried out so that there should not be any further constraint coming up, because this is a real life system. When we improve on one constraint removal, there is a likely probability that some other constraint in the system will be appearing. So the best is that we have a proper comprehensive plan like the TSAP, which we are going to approve inshallah shortly, and a proper analysis is carried out to offer any kind of assignment or project in the private sector that can really benefit the end consumers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Imtiaz Sab, for highlighting the role of regulator. Also, sort of, you very brightly reflected upon the interventions that have been made by the speakers. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And let's sort of, before coming back to we at the very end we'll take one of the private sector, but firstly let's sort of come towards the Q&A and the discussion. So I believe, let me sort of again start from the very first question that we sort of received for Faizan Sab. Let me very quickly highlight the point that was the point around the feeders that we was first raised, if you want to sort of shed upon those. For LESCO, we also have a question: what is government policy to restrict domestic PV solar to certain power export to distribution networks like 5 kV, kilowatt or so? So perhaps firstly we can listen from Faizan Sab, and then we'll come towards the experts in the room for their questions and their discussion as well. So yeah, firstly, Faizan Sab, over to you.
Hello, Ji. So the question basically was that it was related to the capacity or the capability for transformer level monitoring, whether it exists or not. I believe the question was whether there are devices in the market where we can install, and also whether those are already being implemented in the distribution network or not. So, and then the second part of that question was the feeder level monitoring as well. So as far as the transformer level monitoring is concerned, yes, the devices, they do exist, but generally you need to chalk out yet again your strategy, that how you need to do it. At the moment, there are specifications, NTDC and distribution company specifications, where we have defined the standards and all those parameters for the distribution transformer level monitoring, and then as well as control. So that is, these exist only for 100 and 200 kVA transformers, distribution transformers. And the rollouts have been gradual. Like 50 APMS systems have been installed in MEPCO. Some pilot have also been installed in LESCO. And then there is an existing World Bank project, which is the EDEIP project. And they look also forward to implementing or in extending that APMS program in PESCO and MEPCO. I have recently done the feasibility for Asian Development Bank for 3 distribution companies, against which the PC1 was recently approved for $200 million US. In that program, we are installing around 20,000 to 25,000 APMS systems in the distribution network of MEPCO, SEPCO, and LESCO. So yes, the technology does exist, but the main approach is that the strategy, These APMS systems have the circuit breakers into them, built-in circuit breakers, where we can remotely control. These are quite expensive. So we need to see that whether we need to install these APMS systems in all the transformers, or whether they needs to be installed only up to a specific level. For example, above 100 kVA transformers. We also have 25 kVA transformers, 50 kVA transformers. So whether we need to install these monitoring systems at those level as well, or maybe we can just install a smart meter just to see what sort of energy consumption is being done. So this is a strategy level issue, but yes, the distribution companies are on it. The solution do exist.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about the feeder level monitoring, that is already being done. And under the USAID's LDIP program, which was, I believe, done in between 2014-15 somewhere. So all the outgoing feeders, as well as the common delivery points, they were installed with energy meters, energy analyzers, you can call them, so that you have a real-time, I think, 5-minute data, what do you call it, aggregation or uski jo limit hoti hai, every 5 minutes, aapke paas you get the data of all the feeder consumption. So at the feeder level, at the 11 kV feeder level, from the substation outgoing, you have how much data, how much energy is being transmitted or is being flown into the 11 kV feeder. Now the question is that you need to install smart meters, APMS systems downstream of that 11 kV feeder in order, and then all this needs to be aggregated at some software technology platform, which is not being done, but the platform is there with PITC. But it needs to be enhanced much more, and then obviously there's this strategy issue कि आपने वो करना कैसे है. So yes, the general answer to this is that yes, the technology is there, but it needs to be strategized based on the finances available. For example, I'll just give you food for thought. ISCO's smart metering program consists of around 9 lakh to 1 lakh metering points, and that is only being implemented in one of the Kent circles, right? अब वो all सारे हर किस्म के consumer पे है और transformers पे भी है. ISCO के जो distribution transformers है ना, those are in the range of 50 to I think 55 to 60,000 distribution transformers. तो क्या मैं वो 9 लाख मीटर्स एक जगह पे लगाने से बेहतर ये हो नहीं सकता था कि मैं उसमें से 50,000 लगा के और all across the distribution transformers लगा लूं और मुझे पूरे network की visibility मिल जाए. So these are some of the points which we need to see.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Faizan Saab. Yeah, but before going to Let's Go, we have another important question. If I can also sort of request my team to display the question from Mr. Guang, sorry, I don't know if it's a Mr. or Miss, but yeah, Guangying Liu. So the summary of the question is that I have one generation question, and that would be grateful if any of the hosts could help with that. Why do you think the Chinese private sector is a potential? And I'll perhaps request Ahad Saab or Badar Saab to sort of respond to it, or their colleagues from PPIB. That why do you think the Chinese private sector is a potential better financier for the grid investment opportunities instead of, for example, the Chinese state-owned companies and Chinese policy banks such as CDB? Because as far as we know, the majority of Chinese investments in Pakistan's power sector are from the Chinese state-owned companies. Even most of the grid investment, even in domestic China, are made by the two giant state grid companies in China. So if any of our experts would like to sort of respond to this question, and then from there we'll go forward with that. So yeah, Badar Saab, please, you can, and for Adil Hamid Saab, we have sort of put on one of the question that relates to you. I'll sort of give a quick summary. That is, why do we actually think of Chinese private sector as a more potential financier than looking at the Chinese state-owned companies and Chinese policy banks? Because historically, that is where the more of the investments have come in from. But I believe Badar Saab wants to respond to it firstly, and then we'll go to Badar Saab, over to you.
Reasons is obvious in the second iteration of China-Pakistan economic corridor that is going on right now. Chinese authorities themselves are insisting or emphasizing that the investment relationship in Pakistan has to be between private companies rather than between the two governments. And the first phase of CPEC also shows that some of the investments that the Chinese state-owned companies made, they did not have bankable feasibilities. They were done because of the governments interactions, G2G agreements. And the Chinese side is like highly aware of the fact that the returns on those, some of those investments at least, are not as much as they were promised. There are two massive examples of that. One is Saiwal power plant that has not been working very efficiently and effectively for the last 2 years for a number of reasons, mainly because we do not have money to import coal. And second is Chinese investment in Thar. In the last 2 years, we have seen that Chinese authorities there stopped gold mining in protest against the non-payment of money to them. We also saw that Chinese power plant there was stopped producing electricity with quite like a considerable amount of time during the last couple of years. So these are, but at the end of the day, they have to work because the agreements operating all these power plants are between the two governments. And the two governments have their political and strategic relations which are very strong and which are higher than Himalayas and so on and so forth. So they have to continue working on these projects. And that experience has told the Chinese authorities that the next mode of investment in Pakistan has to be in the private sector. Secondly, from the Pakistani perspective, I think our government talks a lot about not being in the business, but always loves to be in the business, in every kind of business that it can do. Like, for instance, recently, it purchased a private power producer. Rather than like allowing the private sector to work, it purchased a private power producer only few weeks ago. So top heavy, big projects, investment heavy, billions of dollars coming in. Our bureaucrats and our technocrats, when they see that money, their eyes just pop up. They think that, okay, we have to do it. And I think Pakistani government needs to get rid of this habit. And if the Chinese are coming in the second phase of CPEC through the private sector, we have to match that with the private sector. So this is a longish answer to a really short question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brother Saab. So, yeah, jumping to the question from the LESCO, if we can just request to go. Yeah, I believe the question is right in front of us. What is government policy to restrict domestic PV solar to certain power export to distribution network like 5K kilowatt or so? I believe there's no, but yeah, I'll let you respond to it, please. And then we'll come to the people over here. I'll come to you. Yeah.
Change in the policy, so it will move forward as it is. But there are a lot of talk going on right now that because we have a lot of penetration, especially in the rooftop residential sector. So we all know that at the moment it is capped to 150% of the sanctioned load. So probably going forward, it might be to be changed to 100% of the sanctioned load, which is a good initiative and to benefit so that the utility also keep operating and the distributed generation also keep going forward in a healthy way.
I'll just like to add, the issue is not about installing the solar, it's more of feeding back to the grid. So you can install as much solar as you want without feeding back to the grid. If you are self-consuming it, that's fine.
Sorry. Yeah, coming to the questions we have from the people sitting over here, I believe. Yeah, yep, please, Adil Sir, you can respond.
Thank you. I just wanted to grab this opportunity to answer one of the questions you just showed on the screen. It's about the Chinese investment and private companies and the role of CPEC. I just want to tell the audience that first of all, we need to see the structure of how private investments are made and what are the policy structure available. So like we understand that these projects are quite capital intensive. So for example, if we implement a $1 billion project, so the equity to debt ratio is usually allowed on the as 80-20, 20-80, 20% equity and debt is 80%. So for that, you need to have a financing arrangement in place. And under CPEC umbrella, the biggest cushion that Pakistan gets is that with the projects which are considered under CPEC, the financing part is almost guaranteed because the government of China authorizes that financing and we have no issues. Secondly, like the HVDC, the only project that we have implemented under CPEC, which is in the transmission sector, it's owned by the company is owned by State Grid, as mentioned in the question. So it's a company formed in Pakistan, but actually the owner and the shareholder or the stakeholder is State Grid. So it is obviously the State Grid of China that is overseeing all that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, we do have, but we'll come to the questions from here. I believe, yes, please go ahead. We'll take 2 to 3 questions and then we'll go to the speakers. Yes, please.
This, and I'm from Pride, and I have a question for Mr. Arkam Ilyas. It is directed to all these stakeholders in general, but लेस्को में इस वक्त 6.5 मिलियन कंज्यूमर्स कनेक्शंस हैं जो ऑन ग्रिड हैं, उसमें से 40,000 नेट मीटर्ड कनेक्शंस हैं. लेट्स से कि जो ऑफ ग्रिड भी हैं, ऑफ ग्रिड तो ऐसी डिमांड है जो कभी ग्रिड पे आई नहीं, ऐसी भी एक बहुत बड़ा चंक है. इस केस में अगर 6.5 मिलियन कंज्यूमर से रेवेन्यू नहीं आ रहा, डोंट यू थिंक कि 40,000 अगर जो फीडबैक कर रहे हैं उससे जो सप्लाई जा रही है 6.5 मिलियन को, वो कितनी ज़्यादा होगी? लाइक द रेशो इटसेल्फ सेज लाइक इट्स अ बिग नंबर. उसके बाद एक ये सवाल इस तरह से भी था that I recently went to an event और वहाँ पे एक CPP के रिप्रेजेंटेटिव थे and he was asked कि अगर CTBC में इम्प्लीमेंट होता है तो how will it benefit the residential consumer since it looks like apparently कि bulk consumers के लिए है. And there he mentioned कि T&D losses का 85% quantum है जो आपके consumer के बिल में आता है. So do you think that DISCOs or in general NDDC, PPIB or NEPRA, they're actually blanketing the flaws on their own part, या फिर नेट मीटरिंग वाकई में इतना मसला कर रही है?
Yes, I believe before the LESCO response, if we can have one more question and then we'll go to the speakers if anyone wants to. Yeah. Yes, please go ahead, Sena.
Okay, so I have one comment and then one question. So I believe we have had discussed a number of challenges and complexities related to grid modernization. And one challenge that all the experts have highlighted is that we lack basic planning. Initially, we invested heavily in generation side and we expanded the generation to meet the growing energy demand. But what challenged that bad planning, I would say, bring in that कि हमारे पास अब generation तो है, extra capacity है, but we cannot provide this energy to the required areas because हमारे पास grid expansion नहीं है. Or that I believe कि we need an inclusive planning. Whenever we are focusing on one part, we need to analyze that what impact that this would bring on the other side of the game. So I believe when we are planning this investments in grid modernization, we also need to have a de-risking investment mechanism also. जैसे हम लोगों ने generation में जो investments किए हैं, वहाँ पे कुछ stranded assets का कुछ वो है, उस component को deal करने के लिए भी need to have a de-risking mechanism initially. And my question is related to that is कि हमने grid modernization की बात की है. So इसमें what particular point or what is the key area? Let's suppose हम grid modernization को मतलब it's like a bit a non-technical question from my side. लेकिन कौन सा priority area firstly किस area को target करने की जरूरत है grid modernization के context में? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Coming to first the colleague from LESCO to sort of respond. And Zainab, if you have any particular speaker you would like to sort of request, or I believe it's open questions so anyone can sort of respond to that. And then we'll take one question from SN Javed Saab, which is around the pumped storage. But yeah, firstly, I believe LESCO colleague can sort of respond to. Sure, from there as well. Yeah.
I would like to hear from the experts as well and from government perspective as well that how government see these opportunity की investment के लिए वो किस तरह
Sure.
उसको deal
Thank you.
करेंगे.
Thank you, Zainab. But first, I believe LESCO colleague, and sir, I'll come to you in the next for. Yeah.
Ji, so the question was regarding, the number of net metering connections and the overall connections which LESCO consumers LESCO have. So it's around 7 million at the moment, and around 100,000 is the correct number right now, the net metered connection. So as we already discussed, so it's not, the government is not discouraging people to install solar. So we have seen now cases where like almost 70% of the installed capacity is feeding back to the grid. It's not the distribution grid, it is going further into the transmission grid as well. So the idea of the distribution system, distributed generation is to self-consumption as well as to supply to the local network. So now from the low voltage network, it is going into high voltage and then into the secondary transmission grid as well. So that is the reason behind this is because every other house has an installed system at their rooftop. So to address this, one of the ways which I already proposed is to have a battery energy storage system at a substation level. So this way we can keep going forward having the solar systems as well as managing the system in a reliable way as well. So this was one way. So it is not like, we are discouraging them, but we want them to, go forward in a, healthy way. The other question was regarding the CTBCM and how, it's beneficial for the residential sector. So CTBCM is, going forward from single buyer to multi-buyer model. So when we go into the multi-buyer model, we have transparency, so bilateral contracts, and the contracts will be obviously done when it is needed. When we need the power, we will go into the contract. So if the distribution companies do not have the demand, so they will definitely not be forced to go into agreements for power generation. And that's the situation right now, like we have surplus capacity and the same thing. So in the first phase, it is for the wholesale market, anyone having 1 megawatt and above connection. So that is the idea. And going forward, in the longer run, it will be into the retail segment as well. When even the residential customer can sign a contract with a generator or supplier of their own choice based on whatever the prices the suppliers are offering to them. So it will be a fully deregulated market. This is the ultimate model.
Their part to curb the losses that they're creating at the moment?
No, discos are definitely doing their part, and from the regulatory aspect, we have the investment plans which covers the interventions needed and the investments required, and the targets, yearly targets for with each intervention, the percentage losses which will be decreased. And it's a regular process. All the distribution companies are required to submit it to the regulator, and they will scrutinize it and then approve the targets. So the targets which are set by the regulator or approved by the regulator for the transmission and distribution losses, it's an obligation by the distribution companies to follow that.
So the grid modernization, I'll just chip in, it's very important, right? जो आपका पहला क्वेश्चन था ना, वो ये था कि जी सिर्फ 100,000 कंज्यूमर्स हैं नेट मीटर के और वो पूरा सिस्टम कैसे अफेक्ट कर रहे हैं, राइट? सो देयर आर टू अप्रोचेस टू दिस, देयर टू प्रॉब्लम्स. एक आप देखें एनर्जी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, एक आप देखें सिस्टम के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से. एनर्जी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से वी ऑलरेडी नो कि व्हाट है. सिस्टम के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से ये हो रहा है कि जहाँ वो सिस्टम्स लगे हुए हैं ना, वहाँ आपको रिवर्स पावर फ्लो और ट्रांसफार्मर बर्निंग और हार्मोनिक्स, पावर वोल्टेज स्वेलिंग, ये इश्यूज आ रहे हैं, right? So that you need to address at that moment. System wide क्या हो रहा है? He can confirm कि 1000 मेगावाट का आपको स्विंग आ रहा है, ठीक है? सुबह के टाइम 1000 मेगावाट आपके पास होता नहीं है, वही 1000 मेगावाट आपके पास इनके नेटवर्क पे रात के टाइम अचानक आ जाता है विद इन हाफ एन आवर. सो दैट इज द सिस्टम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. और जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड लेवल पे ये प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही हैं, सो अच्छा इसका रिजॉल्व कैसे करना है? अब एवरीबडी टॉक्स अबाउट ग्रिड मॉडर्नाइजेशन एंड थिंक कि रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी की इंटीग्रेशन की वजह से. दैट इज नॉट. गवर्नमेंट कहती है कि हम स्मार्ट मीटर्स लगा रहे हैं और हम सिर्फ थेफ्ट लॉसेज और ये इन चीज़ों के लिए लगा रहे हैं. सो आई टोल्ड द गवर्नमेंट that this grid modernization is not only for theft losses या आपके reduction in AT&C losses. It has a byproduct, and that byproduct is the renewable energy integration. So it has many other advantages as well. It's not something like कि मैं इतने transformers पे इतना meters लगा दूंगा, इतनी इसकी cost है, इतने 50% losses मेरे reduction हो जाएंगी और मेरे इतने पैसे फायदा हो जाएगा. उसका जो दूसरा फायदा है ना, वो बहुत ज़्यादा है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपके मीटर रीडर्स नहीं होंगे या कम हो जाएंगे. तीसरी बात यह कि जैसे आप रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं. लोग अनऑथराइज्ड 10 किलोवाट अलाउड है, वो 15 किलोवाट लगा रहे हैं. तो वो क्यों लगा रहे हैं 15 किलोवाट जब उनको 10 किलोवाट अलाउड है, या 15 अलाउड है तो वो 20 लगा रहे हैं. तो दीज आर द थिंग्स जो आप ग्रिड मॉडर्नाइजेशन से ओवरकम कर सकते हैं, नॉट ओनली थेफ्ट लॉसेस.
वेल, इसमें एक और बात थी, देखें कि हमें इस चीज़ से घबराने के बजाय कुछ प्लान करना चाहिए. सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि जैसे अभी बताया है उन्होंने, फैजान साहब ने भी, हमें हर डिस्कोर्स को पहले तो ये कैलकुलेट करने की ज़रूरत है कि टोटल उनका लोड जो है पीक आवर्स में कितना है.
ये सेकंड क्वेश्चन का भी आंसर होगा.
हाँ, और रात को शाम को जब उनको चाहिए तो वो कितना लोड है, उसकी अभी तक कोई ऐसी स्पेसिफिक स्टडी नहीं हुई कि ये अगर सिस्टम में आ रहा है तो ये कहाँ तक जाएगा, और अगर ये आपका 132 से 220 लेवल पे भी जाता है और 500 के भी लेवल पे भी जाता है तो कितना जाएगा. जब तक ये स्टडी हमारी नहीं होगी ये आपका क्लियर ही नहीं हो सकता. आप देखें कि यूरोप में या जहाँ पे भी है वहाँ तो इंसेंटिव इस चीज़ का दिया जाता है कि जब आपका पीक आवर्स हैं उस वक्त आप कम से कम लोड जो है ना वो लें और सिस्टम को ज़्यादा दें. उसके पैसे कुछ और हैं और जो ऑफ टाइम है उसके कुछ और पैसे हैं. تو وہ بھی سارا انہوں نے مینیج کیا ہوا ہے اسی ماڈرنائزیشن کے تھرو کہ بھائی سسٹم کی اسٹڈی پہلے تو ہو، ہر سسٹم میں ڈسکوز کی اسٹڈی ہو کہ لیٹ سی ان کا دن میں اتنا سولر یا رینیوبل انرجی کا لوڈ ہے جو کہ کنزیومر یوز کر رہا ہے، اور اتنا وہ شام کو لے گا اور اتنا وہ دے گا دن میں. جب تک کہ ہم اس پہ نہیں آئیں گے نا ہم سسٹم کو بنا ہی نہیں سکیں گے. جیسے کہ فیضان صاحب نے کہا کہ اس میں ملٹیپل آف ایشوز ہیں، کمپلیکسٹی بہت زیادہ ہے کیونکہ ریئیکٹیو پاور کمپنسیشن ہے. ابھی انہوں نے بتایا کہ لو پاور فیکٹر کے ایشوز ہیں. لو پاور فیکٹر کے ایشوز کیوں آ رہے ہیں؟ وہ اس وجہ سے آ رہے ہیں کہ آپ کا ریئیکٹیو پاور کی کمپنسیشن نہیں ہو رہی. جب تک کہ وہ بیلنس نہیں ہوگا آپ کے پاور فیکٹر کم ہوگا تو آپ زیادہ کرنٹ ڈرا کریں گے، آپ کے اکوپمنٹ ڈیمیج ہوں گے. آپ کا جو کرنٹ لیول ان کی ریٹنگ ہے 100 واٹ کا جو بلب لیتا ہے وہ ڈبل لے رہا ہوگا اس کو مینیج کرنے کے لیے. تو یہ ساری اسٹڈیز کی بہت ضرورت ہے. تھینک یو.
جی پلاننگ کے پوائنٹ آف ویو سے میں پلاننگ پہ تھوڑا سا میں یہ ہائی لائٹ کروں گا کہ نیڈ ٹو امپلیمنٹ 2-3 چیزیں دیٹ از ویری لائک پریٹی مچ اسٹریٹ فارورڈ. ڈسٹریبیوشن کمپنیز نے اس میں انفارچونیٹلی بالکل دے ڈیڈنٹ پے اینی اٹینشن، دے کمپلیٹلی اگنورڈ دا پوٹینشیل آف ڈسٹریبیوٹیڈ انرجی ریسورسز. 2015 سے نیٹ میٹر ریگولیشنز ہیں، 2025 پہ آگے ہیں. مجھے بتائیں انہوں نے لوڈ فور کاسٹنگ سسٹمز اپنی امپروو کی کہ نہیں؟ اب لاسٹ ایئر بلکہ 2023 میں نیپرا نے ریگولیشنز ان کو ڈائریکٹ انسٹرکشنز دی تھیں ڈسٹریبیوشن کمپنیز کو کہ آپ میڈیم ٹرم لوڈ فور کاسٹنگ یوزنگ اسٹیٹ آف دی آرٹ سافٹ ویئر یوز کریں، جس میں آپ کے پاس پریڈکٹیو انالیسز، ویدر فور کاسٹنگ سسٹمس، پلس آپ کی جو لوڈ گروتھ ہے وہ ساری چیزیں ٹیلی اپ ہوں اور بتا دے. فار ایگزامپل آپ یہ پروجیکشن کریں کہ بھائی اس فیڈر پہ اتنے اس وقت نیٹ پیریڈ ہیں، فیوچر میں اتنا ہو سکتا ہے پوٹینشیل. ٹھیک ہے، اچھا ویدر 2 سال بعد ایسا ہونا ہے تو 3 سال بعد جو ہمارا سولر کا پوٹینشیل ہے وہ کم ہو رہا ہے، زیادہ ہو رہا ہے. نیکسٹ 3 سال ہمیں کس طرح کی بجلی چاہیے، کس طرح کی نہیں. سو آپ دیکھ لیں ابھی جو اس سے جو پچھلا ورژن آئی جی سیپ کا تھا اس میں 2000 میگا واٹ نیٹ میٹرنگ لی ہوئی تھی. وہ 2000 میگا واٹ 10 سالوں میں وہ 1 سال میں ہی آ گئی.
اب
تو اب
just very quickly,
so these are some of the things. اور اس میں اور بھی بہت سارے
yes sir, please. I believe he has been requesting the question, so over to you.
Hello, Kamran. I am into infrastructure. I've attended this forum first time, and I was thinking the whole discussion is basically more oriented towards technical side and more oriented towards project side. And I'm amazed to see the difference of opinion between PIDE, PPI, and NEPRA, etc., etc. So one thing I would request that this is a great achievement کہ آپ نے یہاں سب کو اکٹھا بٹھایا ہے اور یہ پہلے ہونا چاہیے. دوسرا ہم ماڈرنائزیشن ڈسکس کر رہے ہیں، بھائی تو کہہ رہے ہیں وہاں پہ میٹر لگ رہے ہیں، تو آئی ڈونٹ نو کہ ہم اس کو ڈسکس کیوں کر رہے ہیں. تیسرا یہ کہ آبجیکٹیو کیا ہونا چاہیے ڈسکشن کا. دس از اے اسٹریٹجک لیول، پالیسی لیول ہے. تو میں کنزیومر ہوں، مجھے کیا بینیفٹ ہونا ہے، اس پہ کوئی ڈیبیٹ نہیں ہو رہی. تیسرا یہ کہ آپ نے سی پیک کو رکھا ہوا ہے، اس کے ساتھ لنک تو کریں. ماڈرنائزیشن آف گریڈ سی پیک سے کیسے آپ لنک کر رہے ہیں؟ آپ سی پیک کے اگین ایک ٹرانسمیشن لائن لاہور لے کے آ رہے ہیں، مجھے تو سمجھ نہیں آ رہی. وائی ڈونٹ یو گو آف دی گریڈ کہ آپ کسی 3 اسٹیک ہولڈر لیں، گورنمنٹ کو لے لیں، ایک ای وی مینوفیکچرر کو لے لیں اور ایک سولر کی کمپنی کو لے لیں، ان کو آپس میں کر دیں لنک سی پیک پہ. اتنی لینڈ ہے بلوچستان میں، وہاں پہ وہ مینوفیکچرر جو ہے سولر سے انرجی لے اور گورنمنٹ ٹیکس کر کے ریونیو کمائے اور وہ ریونیو آپ جو بھی کرنا چاہتے ہیں کریں. یہ سمپل سائنسز ہیں، مجھے نہیں سمجھ آتی اتنا بڑا ڈیٹا. یہ اسٹریٹجک لیول کی ڈسکشن کیا کریں. اتنے بڑے بڑے لوگ بیٹھے ہوئے ہیں، تو میں تو ایک کنزیومر ہوں اینڈ آئی ایم انٹو انفراسٹرکچر، وہ ایک الگ چیز ہے، میں ایکسپرٹ نہیں ہوں الیکٹریسٹی کا. بٹ یہ اسٹریٹجک فور سائٹ کی چیزیں ہیں، ہم فور سائٹ نہیں کر رہے. مے بی 20 ایئرس فرام ناؤ مجھے ٹرانسمیشن کی ضرورت ہی نہیں ہوگی، میں گریڈ سولر پہ ہی چل رہا ہوں. پھر آپ کیا کریں گے اور آپ کی سیلریز کہاں سے آئیں گی؟ کچھ ویژن، کچھ آئی مین 20 ایئرس اہیڈ کا سوچیں ہم. اور سی پیک کو ہم کیوں نہیں، سارا اکنامک کوریڈور تھا، وہ صرف روڈ ہی رہ گیا ابھی. تو یہ 2-4 چیزیں تھیں میں نے شیئر کر دی فورم سے. آگے
Yes, thank you. Very well noted point. And sir, bilkul, you're very right. We have a sequence or series of consultations, and we have been, I believe, the first point that you have mentioned is the key focus of what we discuss every day, perhaps as CPI, especially over the long term. Today, it was more tilted towards the technical discussion. So yeah, that's the reason of key interventions. But yeah, moving towards Badr Sahab, just coming to it, let me take a couple of more questions and then I'll come to you first. Yeah, Umar, please.
My question from Chinese, Lina is available? Okay. So as far as for Chinese and CPEC concerned, how we can make a strategic platform to make the Chinese investment in this Pakistan, as we know that I already discussed that US-China tariff already increases. So therefore, Chinese have to relocate some of their industries in Pakistan for their localization of equipments. So how can we could play an active part, as a joint venture?
Thank you. So yeah, Zainab, very quickly, just in 30 seconds perhaps, and then we'll come to the response to the question.
So my question is a bit relevant to what Kamran Saab have said and what Umar is saying. I just want to know what technical areas we actually need technical expertise from China, basic areas, if you can highlight those.
Sure. So yeah, first coming to Badasab, and then I'll be coming to other speakers.
From China, but the first and foremost that we need to learn is strategic planning. Is like planning for the next 20 years. Unfortunately, all our plans are always not even for the present, but for the past. Like for instance, in 2005 and 2006, we started observing electricity shortages. We did not plan anything to overcome those shortages. In 2010 and 2012 and 2013, we started planning to overcome those shortages, which had started appearing in 2005. So 2013 onwards, we were like trying to manage that supply side constraint, that shortages हो गई हैं बिजली की, तो अब कैसे लेके आए, और उसमें हमने डेस्परेशन में साहिवाल में कोल पावर प्लांट लगा दिया, जिसकी कोल जो है वो साउथ अफ्रीका से आएगा, और RLNG प्लांट लगा दिया वहां पे त्रीनू में, जिसकी RLNG कतर से आएगी या नहीं आएगी, मतलब चले ही नहीं वो प्रोजेक्ट। अच्छा जी, ये उस प्रॉब्लम हमने क्रिएट कर दिया, हमने डिमांड से ज्यादा अपनी कैपेसिटी जनरेट कर ली। नाउ वी हैव अ कैपेसिटी प्रॉब्लम। अब हम इस कैपेसिटी प्रॉब्लम को 2017-18 के बाद से देख रहे हैं, और अभी तक उस पास्ट के प्रॉब्लम को प्रेजेंट में या फ्यूचर में हल कर रहे हैं। एंड एट द सेम टाइम अनदर क्राइसिस इज लुकिंग इन द फेस ऑफ अस इज के ये पूरा सिस्टम सस्टेनेबल भी है कि नहीं, जो आपने सवाल उठाया। 5 साल बाद ये सिस्टम को कौन पे कर रहा होगा, इसकी सारी जो कॉस्ट है, इसका जो सर्कुलर डेट है, इसकी जो तनख्वाहें हैं, इसकी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कॉस्ट है, वो कौन पे कर रहा होगा, या कोई पे कर भी रहा होगा कि नहीं, ये सस्टेनेबल भी नहीं है कि नहीं, इसकी कोई प्लानिंग अभी तक हम नहीं कर रहे। ये उस वक्त करेंगे जब 5 साल गुजर चुके होंगे, और उस वक्त तक पास्ट की प्लानिंग ही हम कर रहे होंगे। ये सबसे बड़ा मेजर फ्लॉ है पाकिस्तान के पॉलिसी एंड प्लानिंग फ्रेमवर्क।
सर ऐसी बात नहीं है कि प्लानिंग नहीं हो रही, अगर आपको विजिबिलिटी नहीं है, दैट इज समथिंग एल्स। ठीक है, अब मैं इस पे अब कितना मतलब टॉपिक सिर्फ एक वाला था मॉडर्नाइजेशन का, तो उसी पे रहा। प्लानिंग अब क्या हो रही है वो अगर मैं आपको इधर बताने बैठूं तो वो फिर एक अलग चैप्टर एक अलग खुल जाएगा। अगर किसी को विजिबिलिटी नहीं है, वी कैन ऑलवेज टॉक।
Yes, thank you. We have again, just in interest of time, I believe just last question from Nadeem Saab, and then we'll move towards the concluding in just a 3-minute video message we have from a Chinese investor. So Nadeem Saab, over to you.
Thank you. I have a very political question that, with the price of electricity, I believe the provinces are very unhappy. So they're trying to please their constituencies with free solar and stuff like that. Every time we think in federation, and this display is also seen sin apni regulatory authority bana raha hai. KP wants to do its own stuff. So why this energy thing is not considered as a national security or interprovincial harmony as well? Because I believe when provinces will start revolting, it's a huge crisis. So why can we layer the political lens as well on all these technical and policies?
Sure. Yeah, let me see if Imtiaz Saab wants to, Imtiaz Hussain Saab, if you want to sort of respond to this question. Yeah.
If you can repeat that, I was.
Nadeem Saab, if you can quickly, just very shortly, please.
So Imtiaz, my question is that, provinces are, from my collection, are very unhappy the way price of electricity is going up, and they have to face the people rather than the federal agencies. So what are the political implications if these issues are not sorted out very quickly? Then provinces will go their own way, like, saying its own regulatory authority. KP is doing and planning to do their own stuff. So when provinces won't listen to the federation, where we will end up politically, despite all these operational.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Over to you.
Unfortunately, this is not a regulatory kind of question. Yes, we need to think on that. The parallel regime is actually hurting in the sense that at one side we are facing the surplus energy, and the other side different initiatives are being taken, and I think that is two in isolation kind of thing, without realizing the actual impact. We are still seeing the result that at one stage, at particular stage, even the net metering is causing us issues, not only in terms of the operational issues, but in terms of the stranded capacity. So we have to be very careful, and actually we should be uh, before taking any step, whether it is motivated in the best of the interest or otherwise, we should have a consolidated approach, and it should be properly streamlined. And before taking any initiative, actually, these issues should be debated at the level of CCI, because it's a make or break situation. The power sector is the sector which is actually causing the huge burden, and if we are not going to improve it, it will have more issues in the pipeline.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Imtiaz Saab. So yeah, I believe we can
But
definitely
we have one last question.
just in 10 seconds, and we'll first then play the message, and then I'll request Ahad Saab to respond to it during the conclusion and final vote of thanks. Yeah, please. Yeah.
So this is a question on behalf of all my colleagues actually, and it is a question directed to Faizan. How do you see the adoption of mini and microgrids when CTBCM gets implemented? Will it catalyze the scale up of this decentralized alternative, making CTBCM completely redundant or vice versa?
ये मुश्किल
Yeah.
इंग्लिश आप पूछते हैं, सारे पाकिस्तानी हम हैं, आसान हो इंग्लिश में। देखिए जो माइक्रो ग्रिड का है ना, उसकी तो रेगुलेशन ऑलरेडी मौजूद है। मेरे नजदीक जो माइक्रो ग्रिड जो है ना, वो आई कंसिडर इट एज ऑफ ग्रिड। ठीक है, तो जो ऑफ ग्रिड है उसके लिए सीटीबीसीएम वैसे ही नहीं बना हुआ। ठीक है, तो ऑफ ग्रिड तो फॉर एग्जांपल बदर साहब भी जानते हैं कि हमारे बहुत सारे एरियाज हैं जो बिल्कुल ही बिजली वहाँ पहुंची ही नहीं हुई। और एक वर्ल्ड बैंक की भी स्टडी थी जिसमें उन्होंने फाइनलाइज किया था कि अगर 5 किलोमीटर के रेडियस के अंडर है तो फिर इट्स बेटर कि आप 1 किलोमीटर था आई गेस, इट्स बेटर दैट यू कैन एनहांस योर ग्रिड और उसके थ्रू प्रोवाइड करते हैं। एंड इफ इट इज मच अवे फ्रॉम 5 किलोमीटर्स देन इट्स बेटर टू सेट अप अ माइक्रो ग्रिड। सो सीटीबीसीएम को तो उस तरीके से उसको अफेक्ट ही नहीं करना। जहाँ तक ग्रिड कनेक्टेड के साथ आप कुछ हद तक पोर्शन लगा दें, येट अगेन वहाँ वही प्रॉब्लम आ जाता है कि हु विल इंस्टॉल। ठीक है, आपका कहाँ फ्रेमवर्क में वो मौजूद है। ये जितनी भी हम इन्वेस्टमेंट्स की बातें कर रहे हैं ना, सीपैक की, कौन आएगा, कैसे आएगा, मैं अभी ये जैनब को भी यही कह रहा था, वी डोंट हैव फाइनेंशियल एंड रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क। मैं क्यों पैसे लगाऊंगा एक ऐसी कंट्री में जहां वो फाइनेंशियल फ्रेमवर्क ही नहीं है कि मुझे पैसे वापस कैसे रिकवर होंगे, कभी भी नहीं मैं लगाऊंगा। आज हम सारे रिडंडेंसी की बात कर रहे हैं कि जी ज्यादा ओवर प्रोक्योरमेंट होगी। मैंने 2013 से 2018 में आई वाज इन एनर्जी डिपार्टमेंट गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पंजाब, वहां हमने सोलराइजेशन भी की। उस वक्त आइडिया क्या था, हाइंडसाइट में बहुत अच्छा लगता है कि जी कैपेसिटी बहुत ज्यादा हो गई। उस वक्त ये था कि इंडस्ट्री ने पहले आना है या बिजली ने पहले आना है। सो इट वाज डिसाइडेड कि बिजली पहले आएगी। 10,000 मेगावाट 5 साल में लगा। 2018 में स्पेशल इकोनॉमिक जोन्स ने आने था। 2018 में मुल्क के साथ क्या हुआ, वी ऑल नो, आई डू नॉट नीड टू से एनीथिंग। सीपैक पूरा रोल बैक हुआ, स्पेशल इकोनॉमिक जोन्स आज तक नहीं लगे। अगर वो 9 स्पेशल इकोनॉमिक जोन आ जाते तो क्या हम आज इस तरह बैठे बातें कर रहे होते कि जी ये तो बहुत ज्यादा प्रोक्योरमेंट होगी? कभी भी नहीं। तो हाइंडसाइट में तो बड़ी अच्छी और इट लुक वेरी नाइस के बात करने का।
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of questions जहाँ थोड़ी heat has again developed, and we can sort of lose the heat over the lunch as well. So yeah, but before that, we do have just a 4-minute recorded message from Enes Zuberi from China 3 Gorges. If we can sort of very quickly display, and then let me invite Ahad Saab for the final vote of thanks. Yeah.
Honorable guest, distinguished speakers, esteemed participant, it is indeed a privilege to talk on a very important topic, which is Pakistan grid modernization and investment opportunities for China private sector investors. As we navigate the path towards the more resilient and sustainable power sector, collaboration between Pakistan and China holds the key to unlock a future energy security, economic growth, and technological advancement. Now, let me first of all give you a slight power sector landscape. Basically, the power sector in case of Pakistan, the population is around 240 million, and only 7% of the population does not have any electricity. Pakistan energy demand is growing exponentially despite having an installed capacity of around 41,000 megawatts. Our sector is burdened by a circular debt, high capacity payments to the IPPs, and unaffordable tariff and severe transmission line constraints. While the government is implementing key reforms including transition towards renewable energy and privatization of the distribution companies, the challenges in the transmission and distribution system continues to impede the progress. Pakistan energy mix today significantly is based on imported fuels, making electricity generation very expensive and really unsustainable for the consumers of Pakistan. The upcoming energy roadmap, however, envisages a transition to the indigenous renewable resources, which consist of 33% hydro, 19% solar, and 10% wind power by 2031. To facilitate this transition, we must modernize our aging grid infrastructure, optimizing energy transmission, and integrate digital technologies. There are a lot of challenges in the Pakistan power grid. I will spell out some of the challenges which we are facing at the moment. There is outdated infrastructure leading to frequent power shortages and inefficiencies. High transmission losses making electricity unaffordable to the consumers of Pakistan. Inadequate capacity to integrate renewable energy causing curtailments in wind and solar power projects. There are transmission line constraints that delay energy transmission. There are policy and regulatory unpredictable and frequently changes. So modernization of Pakistan grid is now no longer an option, but it is a necessity to ensure sustainable energy growth. This presents immense investment opportunities for Chinese companies that specializes in energy infrastructure and smart grid technologies. Now there are a lot of investment opportunities for the Chinese investors. Let me quickly give a rundown on what are the investment opportunities available. China has been a leader in the grid modernization, digitalization, and renewable energy integration. The expertise of Chinese companies can play a pivotal role in upgrading Pakistan power sector, like grid modernization and digitalization, which means advanced grid automation to reduce transmission losses and enhance efficiency, smart grid solutions for real-time monitoring and demand management, upgrading of the SCADA and EME system to optimize transmission system, renewable energy integration, deployment of high efficiency transformer to support renewable energy, particularly solar and wind power projects, battery energy storage systems to stabilize the grid and ensure continuous supply, solutions for hybrid power projects integrating solar, wind, and traditional energy resources, high voltage power equipment and transmission lines, investment in HVDC transmission line for long distance efficient power transfer, gas insulated switchgear to enhance grid reliability, expansion of the substation and transformers to accommodate grid growing demand, industrial efficiency, that is the most important topic because electrification solutions for the specific economic zones, ensuring stable power supply to industries, and advanced power quality solutions to eliminate fluctuations and enhance industrial efficiency. So what I will say is there are unlimited opportunities for Chinese investors in the Pakistan grid system. So what should be the way forward? To facilitate Chinese investments in Pakistan grid modernization, some strategic actions must be taken, like forge strategic partnership, collaboration between the government agencies, utilities, private sector investors to co-develop projects, leveraging Chinese experts expertise in HVDC transmission lines, smart grids, and energy storage solutions, identify and develop priority projects, aligning with the stakeholders to prioritize grid automation, transmission upgrades, and variable energy integration projects, accelerate regulatory approvals, engage with policy makers for regulatory support, invest in local capacity building for the technology transfer, establish training programs and knowledge sharing initiatives for local engineers and technicians, facilitate technology transfer to develop Pakistan long-term resilience. So in conclusion, Pakistan's power sector stands at a critical juncture. Modernization of our grid infrastructure is essential to ensure an affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy future. Chinese investors are strongly encouraged to export opportunities in smart grid technologies, HVDC transmission lines, and energy storage solutions. Together, through strategic partnership and knowledge exchange, we can overcome Pakistan energy challenges and accelerate the country's transition towards the modern, efficient, and renewable power grid. I thank you all for your time, and I look forward for a meaningful discussion on how we can transform Pakistan energy landscape through strong collaboration with Chinese private sector companies. Thank you. Honorable guest, distinguished.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, I believe we are running over time. So with this, let me invite Ahad Saab for the final vote of thanks. And we do have, we'll also sort of invite you all for a group picture, as we do have a copy of a recent report on grid modernization. That's a very initial scoping. And yeah, we also have a book stall over there, which includes SDPI's recent publications around the energy sector over the last year as well. So with this, over to you, Ahad Saab.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. मैं थोड़ा सा I think कि ये प्लानिंग में हमसे भी गलती हुई है कि हमने जो है ये I think बहुत बड़ा टॉपिक जो है वो एक ही मीटिंग में भुगताने की कोशिश की है. I believe इसके 3 मेजर एस्पेक्ट्स हैं. एक आई थिंक जो टेक्निकल जिस पे आज काफ़ी ज़्यादा बात हो गई. दूसरा एस्पेक्ट फाइनेंशियल है, जैसे आई थिंक फैजान साहब ने कहा, उस पर एक सेपरेट आई थिंक डिबेट होनी ज़रूरी है. और तीसरा एस्पेक्ट जो आई थिंक बदर साहब ने जिस तरह कहा कि जो पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी और पॉलिसी साइड की चीज़ें हैं उनके ऊपर भी बात करने की ज़रूरत है. और इसके अंदर मेरी सजेशन होगी उबैद कि अगर हम एनसेट के कोई एक वर्किंग ग्रुप इस पे ग्रिड मॉडर्नाइजेशन पे बना दें और हम फिर पहले क्लोज ग्रुप्स में बात करके और फिर हम पब्लिक फोरम पे आएँ, तो दैट विल आई थिंक मेक मोर सेंस. अच्छा, इसके अंदर 2-3 जो मेरी कुछ इन्वेस्टमेंट साइड पे स्पेशली जो क्योंकि कुछ काम हम लोग करते रहे हैं. अभी करंटली STPI इज़ प्रिपेयरिंग ए इन्वेस्टमेंट क्लाइमेट इंडेक्स फॉर पाकिस्तान. तो आई थिंक उसके अंदर ये सारी चीज़ें कवर हो गई, और उसका टीम लीड होने की हैसियत से जो मुझे समझ आई कि इसके अंदर टेक्निकल फाइनेंशियल एस्पेक्ट तो हैं, लेकिन आई थिंक मोस्ट ऑफ इट इज़ सब्जेक्टिव. जो इन्वेस्टमेंट प्रमोशन है दैट इज़ सब्जेक्टिव, स्पेकुलेशन बेस्ड. और उसके अंदर जिस तरह सर आपने रूल ऑफ लॉ का जिक्र किया, ये सारे फैक्टर्स जो हैं दे प्ले अ रोल. एक चीज़ जो मुझे लगता है कि आई थिंक विच कैन बी डन प्रॉबेबली, जिस तरह हमने देखा कि प्लानिंग बहुत सारी हो रही है, लेकिन शायद वो प्लानिंग के जो आउटपुट वेरिएबल्स हैं उनको हम चेंज कर सकते हैं. कि फॉर एग्जांपल एनर्जी प्लानिंग माइट लीड टू एक्सपोर्ट्स, टू इन्वेस्टमेंट, टू जॉब क्रिएशन. उस तरह के हम सिनारियोज बना लें कि बेस्ट केस सिनारियो क्या बन सकता है, वर्स्ट केस क्या बन सकता है. तो आई थिंक उससे थोड़ा सा एक तो पॉलिसी मेकर के लिए मसलन मैं जो कहना चाह रहा हूँ वो इस हवाले से है कि शायद 80s में एनर्जी जनरेशन भी पॉलिटिकल एजेंडा में नहीं था, लेकिन ये 90s में आ गया. और उसके बाद आई थिंक सबसे बड़ा पॉलिटिकल एजेंडा ही एनर्जी, ये आपका जो इलेक्ट्रिक पावर है वो बन गया. तो किस तरह हम ये जो सारी डिबेट है इसको हम पॉलिसी मेकर की ज़ुबान में बेहतर कर सकते हैं, उस पर आई थिंक फिर बहुत ज़्यादा हम डिबेट उस साइड पे भी लेके जा सकते हैं. कि फॉर एग्जांपल बलूचिस्तान की पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी ऑटोमेटिकली इट गेट्स अफेक्टेड बिकॉज ऑफ लो पॉपुलेशन, लेकिन पॉपुलेशन के ना होने से एनर्जी का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो है वो इन्वर्सली प्रोपोर्शनल है, क्योंकि लैंड मैस उनका जो एरिया है दैट इज़ टू बिग. تو یہ کچھ چیزیں تھیں جن کے اوپر بات ہے. سیکنڈلی آئی تھنک کہ وہ بھی ڈسکس ہوا کہ انٹیگریٹڈ انرجی ہم کس طرح انٹیگریٹڈ انرجی پلاننگ کی طرف جائیں. جو ہمارے ماڈلز ہیں سم ہاؤ ان دا فیوچر میں بھی کہ آئی جی سیپ ٹی سیپ اور ان کو ہم کسی طرح کمبائن کر دیں ایک ماڈل میں, اور پھر آئی تھنک آٹومیٹیکلی تھنگس ول اسٹارٹ میکنگ سینس. اینڈ سملرلی جغرافیکلی بھی جو ہے وہ آئی تھنک ہمیں اسی طرح انٹیگریٹ کرنا ہوگا پالیسی لیول پہ. بہت زیادہ ڈبیٹ ہوئی ہے اور بہت سارے لوگ جو ہیں وہ الیکٹرک پاور سیکٹر کو ٹیلی کام کے ساتھ لنک کرتے ہیں. سی ٹی بی سی ایم کو ایکسپلین کرنے کے لیے بھی ہمیں یہی کہا جاتا ہے کہ ایک سم چھوڑ کے آپ دوسری سم لگا لیں. مجھے لگتا ہے کہ یہ زیادہ ریلیونٹ ہے ایف ایم سی جی سیکٹر سے, جس میں جو پروڈکشن ہے دیٹ ہیز آلموسٹ بیکم ان امپورٹنٹ اینڈ دا لاجسٹک اینڈ دا سپلائی چین ہیز بیکم مور امپورٹنٹ. تو آئی تھنک وہ جو ٹرانسمیشن ہے اس کی امپورٹنس ہمیں تھوڑا سا سیکٹورل ویژولائزیشن کے چینج کرنے سے بھی آئی تھنک سمجھ آئے گی. وہ بھی ایک فیکٹر ہے پروبیبلی. اسی طرح آئی تھنک کہ سی ٹی بی سی ایم پہ میں نے اس دفعہ کافی جو ریسرچرز جنہوں نے این آر پی یو جو ایچ ای سی کی ابھی فنڈنگ آئی ہے وہ بھی ہم سے ڈسکس کی تھی, تو ان کو میں نے یہی کہا ہے کہ کسی طرح ہم سی ٹی بی سی ایم کے کچھ سناریوز بنا سکیں. کہ بہت سارے ملک ہیں جن میں جو ہے وہ اس طرح کے ماڈلس چلے ہیں, بہت سارے ملکوں میں فیل بھی ہوئے ہیں. اس پہ ایک ہماری ایس ڈی پی آئی کی رپورٹ بھی ہے. سو اس طرح کی ہم ماڈلس کر کے دیکھیں کہ ورسٹ کیس میں کیا ہوگا, بیسٹ کیس میں کیا ہوگا, اس کی آؤٹ کم نکلے گی کیا, اس سے فرق کیا پڑے گا. آئی تھنک یہ چیزیں اب ہمیں کرنے کی ضرورت ہے. انفارچونیٹلی ہم لوگوں نے بہت جو یہ پالیسی گیپس رہ گئے ہیں اس کی وجہ سے انرجی سیکٹر میں پرٹیکولرلی اٹ ہیز کم ٹو اے پوائنٹ کہ جہاں پہ انسینٹیو ٹو ڈو گڈ ختم ہو گیا. کہ اب میں اگر انرجی کنزرو کرتا ہوں, میں انرجی ایفیشینٹ ہوتا ہوں یا میں سولر لگاتا ہوں, تو انفارچونیٹلی ہمیں لانگ ٹرم میں نقصان ہو رہا ہے کہ یہ آپ کے کیپیسٹی پیمنٹس اور باقی ساری چیزوں کی وجہ سے. آئی تھنک کہ ناؤ اٹس ٹائم کہ ہم ان ساری چیزوں کو انٹیگریٹ کریں اینڈ وی گو فارورڈ ود پازیٹیو مائنڈ سیٹ. تھینک یو ویری مچ آل فار جوائننگ. آئی تھنک بہت ہی اچھی ڈبیٹ تھی, بٹ آئی تھنک وی شوڈ کیپ دا مومنٹم گوئنگ. تھینک یو.
Thank you. If I can request all of our speakers to please join us on the stage, and SDPI team, if you can sort of kindly bring the reports. Yeah.